Sword of Coming Chapter 1060. The white jade is flying in the blue cloud. Heaven is pure and peaceful. Maybe Xiao Mo's sword light was too eye-catching and the speed of the sword was too fast. It must be a great sword fairy who appeared, and many monks rose up in the wind in their respective dojos in various states, wanting to come here to find out. After all, there are quite a few famous swordsmen in the Qingming world. If you want to talk about swordsmen, they will naturally win the championship. In the Qingming world, there are often monks Yufeng coming to the bright moon, and the old bright moon, which is now hanging in the sky with Hao Kai, is used as a tourist attraction. Bai Yujing is not too restrictive about this, but monks cannot be in the moon. After staying for a long time, you can bring the utensils and delicacies on the mountain to decorate, and enjoy the scene of the 14 states. As a side dish, you can have a drink. The old master glanced sideways, disgusting Yaxing who disturbed him and Xiaomo drinking, so he put his fingers together and flicked his fingers here and there, bang bang bang. It made a sound similar to that of a fan falling into a fly, and knocked the Qingming Taoist priest who started the Immortals back to the ground. It was so easy it was like being hit by a sturdy sap in the head. After finally stopping the figure, the eyes flashed with gold stars, and they stabilized their hearts. They didn't dare to curse, they could only slander. One of them, Yufeng, originated from the Jade Purity realm in Juzhou. The realm is not high, but there is a Yufeng treasure which is extremely fast, and his body is like a golden snake soaring to the bright moon. If this is the flick of the finger magic that collides with the old master, it is estimated that the injury will not be light, at least the treasure will not be able to be preserved. Xiao Mo glanced at the female crown, then bent his fingers and a line of sword light popped out. The sword energy did not go straight, but drifted like a gossamer, spreading out thousands of miles in an instant. In the end, the sword chi wrapped around the flying shuttle treasure boat that the monk was driving, and with a gentle tug, dragged her back to a mountain top on the earth, together with the person and the treasure. The frightened young female crown hurriedly put away the talisman boat that belonged to the treasure of Zhou, and she gave a stern bow to the bright moon as a thank you. Seeing Xiao Mo's shot, Lao Guanju picked up the wine bowl and took a sip of the self-brewed water named Xianxia. In ancient times, Xiao Mo has always been more tolerant towards female qi practitioners in the world. The old Guanju nodded and said, "It's a pity that you woke up late, Xiaomo," and Zuanduguan took the lead. Xiao Mo smiled and said, "According to the idea of the context and knowledge proposed by Daoist Bixiao in Luobeatin, if I wake up early, I may not be able to see the sun, and I can't accompany the sun on such a journey. In the demon building of Beipingzu town, I can't think of the previous path that suits me." Lao Guanju smiled and said, "That's it. I haven't seen him for 10,000 years and Xiao Mo's character remains the same, but he has grown a lot. Xiao Mo's superb swordsmanship, which is at its peak, is like a paper kite in a spring day with a line of blue sky." With such a commotion, a Bai Yujing heavenly immortal who was living in a secluded place in Hao Kai couldn't sit still. Before the old Taoist went out, he habitually pinched his fingers and counted, which was strange. Unlike in the past, it was finally appropriate to go out today. Immediately came here to visit the master of Bixiao Cave. In the bright moonlight, in addition to the temporary alchemy dojo owned by the master of the Bixiao Cave, there is also a neighbor, a white jade Taoist palace that can be seen with the naked eye as thick as a stream of spiritual energy. The master is the Taoist priest of Baiyujing Yushu City. He has previously received a decree from Erzhong to teach Yudo. He can practice here, deducting a lot of merit from a book in the Qing Pavilion on the highest building in Baiyujing, in exchange for a shortcut. Breaking the bottleneck of the immortal realm, in the Mingyue dojo far away from the world, travel the number of ways to get out of the house and prove the way to soar. Said to be neighbors but really want to visit, in fact, it is tantamount to a long journey across several continents on land. Xiao Mo still sat motionless with fellow Daoist Bai Xiao, while Wang Yuanlu was of low rank and had already stood up under the eaves to entertain guests. As for the young Taoist boy sitting on the bench in the house who was concocting alchemy, he didn't like to be greeted and sent to him. Lao Guanju is tall and has a fluttering beard. He is indeed immortal. Even if the old Taoist is sitting and drinking at the moment, his height is almost the same as the standing disciple Wang Yuanlu. The visitor was the third in command of Yushu City, the old Taoist named Su Zujing, holding a whisk in his hand. The old Taoist priest is the direct disciple of the previous city owner of Yushu City. His Taoist age is long, but unfortunately his aptitude is not very outstanding. Of course, the so-called mediocrity is compared with the Taoist officials of the same generation in Baiyujing. Zhang Fenghai, who had read all the books in Yushu City at the age of 30, was the only junior disciple of the old Taoist priest. When the old Taoist was about to speak, the old Guanzhu said indifferently, "Su Zujing, speak the elegant words of Haoran. My Taoist friend from Haoran can't understand what Qingming is saying." Of course, the old Taoist couldn't help but bowed his head. Su Zujing Baiyujing Yushu City pays respects to the master of Bixiao Cave. The old watchman is still sitting. Xiao Imo stood up and returned the salute, smiling. The Taoist name is Shizhu, the name is unfamiliar, Jianxiu. Haoran Luopa Mountain is enshrined by name. Su Tianjun, it is a pleasure to meet. Lao Guanzhu stretched out a palm. Su Zujing sat down at the table and Xiao Imo deliberately picked up a pot of long-live wine to entertain the guests, because he heard the young master say that Yushu City and Xianxia City are quite good on the 12th floor of the 5 cities of Baiyujing. As for the suspicion of being generous to others, when do you and fellow Daoist Baixao need to care about this? If there is not enough wine, I will complain that Daoist Bixiao is lazy in making wine. Wang Yunlu just took a white bowl from the stove. As soon as the white bowl came to the table, the wine followed. Wang Yuanla's heart was warm in an instant. Senior Xiao Imo must hit it off. These days, the thin Taoist monks are practicing Taoism here. There is only one reason master and his old man are really not good at being a man. As for the fighting mosquitoes and flies, just now no one really came to the door to disturb them. They were just on their way to Hao Kai and they were beaten back to the ground by the master. Is it in your way? Master, you have great powers, everyone is in awe, you dare not say a word and your disciples will still be in the world in the future. Su Zujing said thank you, took a sip of wine and entered the entrance of the immortal brew. In an instant, the spiritual energy rolled from the throat into the liver and intestines, like a waterfall, and the atmosphere of the cave all the way was fresh. The old Taoist couldn't help but exclaim, "Good wine." Lao Guanzhu didn't appreciate it and he just said, "After drinking a jar of wine, if you have something to say, just leave quickly and I want to reminisce with Xiao Imo." Su Zujing smiled and said, "I just came here to pay a respect to the mountain top with the seniors. It would be even better if we could chat with the seniors a few more ancient stories. Hearing is always better than seeing it in person, and when future generations look at the old yellow calendar, it is always better than what those who have experienced in the book say." The old Guanzhu snorted, but it was rare that he did not directly order the expulsion. Su Zujing had to sit and drink silently. Fortunately, Xiaoma saw that the immortal official of the Yushu City Tianjun was not good at words, so he took the initiative to chat a few words, such as who the previous Yufeng Taoist was, what identity and what mountain they came from. In this way the atmosphere of the wine table is not so dull. Su Zujing naturally knew everything and said everything. The affairs of the Qingming world are Baiyujing's own affairs. Su Zujing is the only Taoist official in Yushu City who can participate in Baiyujing's affairs. Su Zujing slowly finished drinking a jar of immortal brew that was not yet known, and then got up to leave. Xiao Imo brought 2 jars of long-live wine and 2 jars of Xianxia wine as parting gifts for the friendship of the landlords. Su Zujing hurriedly thanked but accepted it unceremoniously. The old Taoist priest and the other party are already familiar enough to call each other Mr. Xiao Imo, and even the Taoist friend has been omitted. The old Taoist's impression of this youthful-looking senior sword immortal is that he is extremely skilled in swordsmanship, has an excellent temperament, and is a man of attention. In Mingyue Heikai's White Jade Palace dojo, in addition to Su Zujing who was in seclusion, there was also a direct disciple and another disciple, all of whom were highly qualified Taoists in Yushu City. Especially the second disciple of the old Taoist priest, who also has the reputation of second Zhang Fenghai in Yushu City. Looking at the young people on the 12th floor of the entire 5 cities, this person has good qualifications and can be ranked in the top 3. This is also because among the young Taoist officials, there is a Taoist named Xingshan, who is a close disciple of Taoist ancestors. Therefore, Su Zujing opened up a dojo in the bright moon this time, and made a special trip to bring this second disciple with him. It's just that the old Taoist knows very well, compared with the sayings of Yushu City Yudo, Baiyujing Zai's Hangjiu, and other sayings of the younger junior brother Zhang Fenghai, they are completely incomparable. After Su Zujing performed the magical power of shrinking the mountains and rivers, the old Guanzhu smiled and said, "Su Zujing doesn't even know about her own dojo, and you have already seen it upside down. Xiao Imo smiled and said, "The mountains and rivers have changed their dispositions. Although 10,000 years later, regardless of whether it is a question of fighting skills or a sword, compared to 10,000 years ago, there are too many restrictions and rules. But when Xiao Imo leaves Qinpingan's side, he is indeed more like Xiao Imo, the former swordsman." The old master said, "Be careful sailing the ship of 10,000 years. Thousands of years later, cultivators and mortal masters are like wearing a robe called the rules, and the magical power of the robe is a worldly way." Lao Guanzhu smiled and said, "If it wasn't for a young and vengeful last-generation hidden official from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Bai Jing and you could occupy one day and 1 month separately and complement each other. Xianxia, the so-called companion of the gods, but that's all. It's been the only one for 10,000 years. It's a pity." In the past there were 3 rounds of bright moons in the wild, and this round of bright moons, called Golden Mirror, also known as Hao Kai, was in the middle of the past. It was not only the nominal dojo of the Little Credit, but it was also Xiao Mo's sleeping million. It's hard to say who is the real owner of Mingyue. If Qin Pingan and his sword cultivators have not worked together to move Haotsai to Qingming, and assuming that the moon has never gone to Aquarius, then wait until Bai Zhe returns to the wild. Wakes up Xiao Imo and has never stripped away his personality to become today's Mr. Xiao Imo. It is estimated that the credit month will obediently change the dojo. Although the jade hook has fallen to the world anyway, there is still a month left in the sky. There is a dojo with only the foundation left, called the Toad Palace. The hundreds of stretches of buildings on the foundation were all razed to the ground in the ancient battle of ascending to the sky. When Xiao Imo woke up at that time, he once took away the ruins of a moon palace, similar to a palace in the capital. Qin Pingan will give Lu Xianyang in the name of Xiao Imo as a wedding gift. So to say that the cultivator who is most familiar with Mingyue Haotsai in the world is actually Xiao Imo, who revisited this place today. According to the original conjecture of the old master, I believe that Zhou Mi must have left behind in the wild. For example, he will at least help Xiao Mo and Bai Jing, one of the 2 ancient sword cultivators. Of course, it is more likely to be Bai Jing, who has relatively better cultivating qualifications. Let her take the lead in joining the 14th realm pure sword cultivation, and fill in the vacancy of the swordsman Lu Cha in time. Because it doesn't matter if you win or lose, the old Guanzhu, who is not partial, doesn't need to spend time and effort to make calculations. Zhou Mi ascends to the sky behind, but in fact scatters the Tao ahead. It's just that this dispersal is the same as Zhou Mi's way of eating wild monsters in the past. It is more sneaky and not fair enough. The great ancestor of Tuyue Mountain died and disappeared. Later, Tuyue Mountain was cut open by Qin Pingan, who borrowed the realm from Lu Chen. The newly appointed co-owner of Wilderness, Jian Xiufiren, was still very young, and half of the Great Wall of Sword Qi was never destroyed by Qin Pingan. Completely refining and moving away, coupled with the existence of the old blind man and the 100,000 Dashan Mountain, this has led to Feishan's co-ownership, which has always been suspected of being unjustifiable. Feishan's situation is similar to that of the ancestor of Tuyue Mountain. But there is no Tuyue Mountain in the wild world, which is a kind of give way on the road, with huge and far-reaching influence. Just like Haoran lost the most holy teachers and Confucian temples, and Qingming lost Daozu and Baiyujing. In this blank time, anyone can compete on the road. This means that the road to the top of the wild monsters is unimpeded. In the next 100,000 years, dragons and snakes are destined to land on the wild land, and the heroes transition. As long as Bai Zhe leaves the majestic Middle-earth divine continent and returns to the wilderness, the matter of raising his realm, he can't help his own desire to press the realm, and he can't help himself. The 2 world wars are together and life is ruined. During the back and forth between Wilderness and Haoran, they have long since begun to join forces with the king of tyranny of the world. Inheriting the Ligui of Zhou Mi, eating books and building a city that never sleeps, just like a library building in the world has just changed its owner, Ligu is equivalent to inheriting all the cultural heritage of Zhou Mi, who created the words and the world's elegant words in the wild, plus Ligu and restores the ancient times at the same time. The true character of a scholar is contrary to the Xianxia of several worlds. I am the king from the north of Ligua. Fei Fei, the new owner of the Hailuo River, was pointed out by Bai Zhe to a new avenue outside of the water law. In addition, the ancient monsters such as Anonymous and Guan Yi have to return to the world, and they must accept their own apprentices. I believe that the candidates for the disciples cannot be chosen by them. There must have been arrangements for each pair of master and apprentice within a certain period of time. Inside, one does everything he can to teach each other, and the apprentice and master can only eat enough when they are fattened. It's up to you. But no matter who survives, Wilderness will have an extra high-ranking monster on the throne with great killing power, or even a cultivator of the 14th realm. I have carefully considered how many 14 realms and ascension realms I have eaten in the wilderness. Within 100 years I will definitely double the number of wilderness. If you only look at appearances. From Hao Ran Jiaxing to Savage When Heist Scholar Zhou Mi, he is the destroyer and creator of all established rules. On the other hand, looking at the young hidden official with whom he had an avenue dispute, Qin Pingon just followed the rules and was the biggest vested interest within the rules. While those who benefit from the protection of the rules often tirelessly maintain the old rules and pursue the stability of a large frame that allows local shaking. The old Guanju stretched out his thumb and rubbed the wine bowl. The white bowl on the table spun gently and the wine in the bowl rippled. He smiled and said, "The way of heaven collapses and the 8 directions are open. What can I do for it? When we return to one, time is also fate." Wang Yunlu stretched his neck and looked at the wine bowl on the table, hesitating to say anything. Xiao Emo nodded lightly and Daoist Bixiao accepted a good apprentice. Because the young Taoist felt that Master's so-called return to oneness might not be accurate. Xiao Emo smiled and said, "It is said in the book that if a person can endure humiliation and burden, the descendants of the family will be born late. The Great Wall of Sword Qi and the sun belong to each other." Lao Guanju smiled and said, "The old master Zhou Xian called before, now the master called by fellow Daoists, the second treasurer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Qin Shi of several worlds, Nanshaochen Bangwen." There are a lot of nicknames and sayings. I never thought that the muddy legs who step on chicken and dog dung every day in a mean alley would also become Qin Gongzi. Xiao Emo said, "Tiank Xingjian is in the land of Kuan. A gentleman is kind and self-improving and he has endless wishes. It is not surprising that he has a place in the world." Back then, the first Taoist priest who led the way on the road had built countless pavilions on the road. Although simple, it could shelter from the wind and rain. What's more, the Taoist priest with the wooden hairpin on his head, every time he passed on a path and a technique, he was also an invisible roadside pavilion. The old master smiled and changed the subject. "Xiaomo, I had even prepared 2 gifts, such as the Sun Palace where the Sea of Fire and the sword refining platforms still exist. I thought about which day to give it from the beginning. Daoist Bai Jing, who has become a Taoist companion with you now, sorry, it has belonged to Wang Yunlu." The thin Taoist priest with sleeves under the eaves felt his heart tighten when he heard the words, "And the treasures are all in their pockets." Xiao Emo smiled and said, "It's okay, it's all external things." At the beginning, as a gift for accepting disciples, Wang Yunlu was given a pocket palace the size of a palm, which is the legendary Sun Palace that has long been smashed. The Sun surname Daotong, whose Dao name is Jinjing, is too greedy. In the ancient land, there were real people with clouds, dragons submerged in puddles, and fire helped the Sun Palace. Lushwiking is the dojo of Mrs. Dandin, the co-owner of Howran Land and Water Transport. However, the rank of the Sun Palace is much higher than that of Lushwiking. According to legend, this place is not only the main dojo of the god of fire, but also one of the sword-making places for sword wielders. According to the young man, this Sun Palace is the top 5 treasures among his master's family. As long as you live long enough and the Tao is high enough, your family will be terrifyingly thick. This is true for Xiao Emo and even more so for Lao Guanju. Bai Jing's belongings are not comparable to Daoist Bai Xiao, and are definitely much richer than Xiao Emo. Wang Yunlu breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the words of the senior. The senior is the senior and he is indeed immortal. How could Master have such a friend? Could it be because of complementary personalities? In fact, this was because Wang Yunlu was too ignorant of Xiao Mo's past, thinking that this senior was polite and easy to talk to with everyone, so he was really easy to talk to. The big demon Yangji and Zhu Yan must not think that Xiao Mo is a good talker. The reason why Lao Guanju can become close friends with Xiao Mo is that Xiao Mo in the ancient years liked to ask people about swords, so he was good at temper. Back then, in order to avoid Beijing, Xiao Mo had to visit Luobaotan. He asked how many swords there were, and the master of Bixiao gave a few jars of wine. The master of the Bixiao cave, who is invincible since he left the cave, can forgive others without mercy. And Xiao Moguang had fought twice with Bai Zhe, who was called Master by almost all the demon clan. One time I felt that Bai Zhe, who had been hanging out with the little master all the year round, didn't do anything well and his realm was not very good, so he had to cut him down. Another time it was done knowingly. But this questioning sword is a new story after making wine with fellow Daoist Bixiao. Just because Xiao Imo didn't understand why Bai Zhe was a fellow demon, why he wanted to help the little master who was from a human race, to cast a 9 cauldron on the top of Howren Mountain and engraved countless real names of the demon race. At that time the heaven had become ancient, the world had been divided into the world and the world had been decided. At that time Bai Zhe had already proved his skill through a battle to ascend to the sky, especially if he was able to give a name. The magical powers gave the monks of the demon clan a headache. There was a group of ancient demons who felt that such a Taoist was not allowed to live. Therefore when Bai Zhe traveled the world alone, there was a meticulous siege. As for the result, for example, Guan Yi, who had been sleeping for 10,000 years, went to recuperate, and the others who did not go to recuperate naturally ended up worse. Bai Zhe stripped off and erased their real names and was forced to die one by one. The demon clan besieged Bai Zhe just like Haidu Zhenlong besieged Qin Qinglu. The greater the number, the greater the latter's exploits. The old Guanju snorted. Is this thing given to Bai Jing, not to you, or is it that your relationship is different now, and it has become so invisible? Xiao Imo smiled bitterly and said, Daoist Bai Xiao can't get around this topic, right? The old Guanju tapped the table with his fingers and the wine in the bowl began to sway, confounding the secret, and then smiled in his heart. Pin Dao is just anxious for Wu Gongzhu. Qin Pingon and Ning Yao. Lu Xianying and Credit Moon. Or Xiao Imo and Bai Jing. There is also the song of the lucky man Su Jun and the Taoist name Fukan. Every time there is a pair of immortal couples who are such a match made in heaven, then Wu Shuang's Taoism in the 14 realms, TSKDC. Sit back and enjoy the success, the tide will rise. Just talking about the young ghost Su Jun who was born in the Great Chao sect. Why can he be able to do it in less than 10 years? Really think that he is just because of his unique roots, outstanding aptitude and prosperous blessings in the sky? You must know that Su Jun is not the kind of chi trainer with a deep sense of government and no last resort. On the way of cultivation he is full of enthusiasm and indomitable in doing things. Of course, Su Jun's own tenacity of Taoism, mellow conduct and clear distinction between right and wrong in doing things are indeed eye-catching. But this kind of person can be said to be a priest of Bai Yujing or a direct disciple of the patriarch of a top sect. But Su Jun's practice started very low, his status is low and he is also very late in enlightenment. Internally, at the beginning of Su Jun's cultivation, it could be said that he was struggling, not to mention what kind of genius or Dao type. Compared with those fellow disciples and brothers who had broken through the realm, his cultivation qualifications were not even low middle or low level, he could only be at the bottom. Therefore, in fact, every step of Su Jun's ascent is Wu Shuangjiang's behind-the-scenes plan and secret protection, and Su Jun has saved danger time and time again. During Wu Shuangjiang's so-called 14 realms of retreat, Wu Shuangjiang, possibly Wu Shuangjiang who traveled far away from the Yin spirit, has been secretly paving the way for the young people of the Great Chao sect. Of course, what Wu Shuang gave, Su Jun could catch it time and time again, which in itself could prove that Su Jun was unusual. The Great Chaos sect, who was originally a feud back then, married Liang Jingshan, and Su Jun formed a marriage with the female founder of Liang Jingshan. The two sides are very different in age and realm. Who would dare to believe it? What's more, these two top sects, only their respective lower sects, were destroyed by each other. Not to mention those good cultivators in history who were supposed to have a promising future, many died unexpectedly. At that time, there were 4 of the great monks sitting at the main table of the wedding banquet, among the 10 people in the Qingming world at that time. Yido Luchin Wuzhou Sun Huaizhong. In fact, there is also Su Jun's long-term friendship, pure martial artist, known as the Lin Shi, the first person in martial arts, Yashan Lin Jiangxian. It's just that Lin Jiangxian didn't reveal his identity at the time, and just picked a corner to drink. Wuzhou and Chaoga, the 2 female champions, are long-acquainted friends. As one of the gifts, Wuzhou not only gave Su Jun, who is the co-owner of the 2 sects, a way of refining things, but also taught Su Jun, who had already been reduced to a ghost, an extremely superior ghost cultivation technique. This Su Jun, who is blessed with a deep relationship and a lot of beauty, has a mantra, "It's already very good." There were also some distinguished guests who sent famous congratulations even though they did not come to the wedding banquet in person, such as Gao Gu of Huayang Palace, Yao Qing, the elegant minister of Xianxia dynasty, and Bai O, the national teacher. In a world, almost all the sects and Taoists who have the face and face are generous with congratulations and gifts. The congratulations and the seating of every person who has attained the Taoism are not only the face of the newlyweds Su Jun and Chaoga, but also a great benefit to Wu Shuangjiang. The same is true when Qin Pingan and Ning Yao, the number one person in the colorful world, get married in the future. One of Wu Shuangjiang's clones, the reason why he stayed in Ascension City was naturally something he wanted. Regarding this matter, Daozu must have a clear view. But Bai Yujing outside the Taoist ancestors may not be able to know about this. Just because Wu Shuangjiang's identity as a military cultivator was too eye-catching, and it wasn't even a trick, Wu Shuangjiang made it clear that he wanted to use this old road to join the 14 realms. But don't forget, in the Haoran martial arts temple today, there are still two killing gods, the surnamed Wu and Bai, who were only reduced to their accompany status because of their flawed merits. That transfiguration demon who fled to Haoran quietly at the beginning, went all the way to the prison on the Great Wall of Sword Qi and finally settled there. In the past 10,000 years, where has there been the most frequent wars? The reason why Lao Guanzhu has this conclusion is to guess, and it means literally. After all, trying to deduce the path of a 14th level cultivator on the Great Tao is definitely not a pleasant thing. As for whether Daozu would leak the matter to anyone such as the second disciple Yudo? Certainly not. Thinking of something, the old Guanzhu said, the guy with the Taoist title guarding the mausoleum, he didn't bring Wang Yuanlu into his command early, and he said that the beautiful jade was not carved, but in fact he was deliberately selling me a face and owed him a big deal. Small favor. Lao Guanzhu smiled and said, there is a young sword cultivator in the Qingshan dynasty. He has excellent aptitude, but he suffers from the lack of guidance from a master. Xiao Mo said, while Mr. Bai Yi hasn't returned to Zuanduguan, and I've had a drink today, he'll quickly go to the Qingshan dynasty to teach him some swordsmanship, and treat him as a direct disciple. I can teach as much as I can. The old master shook his head and said, you don't have to be so serious. You only need to teach a few swordsmanship skills and it will be enough for that kid to benefit for the rest of his life. Xiao Mo said, since you have taught, you have to be serious. The old master nodded and said nothing. As a Taoist friend, you don't need to be polite. Lao Guanzhu stomped his feet lightly, then put his fingers together, and with a casual swipe, a picture of the mountains and rivers appeared on the table. The old master smiled and asked, have you seen any eyebrows? Xiao Mo just glanced at it, nodded and said, the astronomical vertical elephant, the immortal layout. Obviously there is an expert who is old enough to give advice. Although Xiaomo didn't know the map on the table, it showed the distribution of Dechaozong Liangjing Mountain and all the vassal hilltops, but Xiaomo's age and vision were there. So as soon as Xiaomo raised his hand, a star map opposite to it hung on the table, the Big Dipper armillary sphere, which was the Ziwiyuan that had been dimmed for thousands of years. It has not regained its brilliance because of the meticulous ascending to the sky and entering the old heaven. As long as it's not one, don't say half one, most half one. In fact, even if it's only a millimeter away from that one, even if the careful cultivation level is already equivalent to the 15-level Qi trainer, who can control the crowd of the old heaven, the filling and replacement of the divine position still cannot become the true owner of the purple palace, in the center of this heavenly city. Therefore Zhou is still unable to become 16 realms. Lao Guanzhu leaked some secrets. The founder of Liangjing Mountain is the little girl in Chaoga. She was born in Chaotian female household registration. But now Qingming World, together with Liangjingshan genealogy cultivator, know this old age. There are only a handful of old things. So Su Jun has to die once. How can he take the form of a heroic spirit and embark on an ethereal way of ascending to the sky? The Zhigung flag is straight and the emperor will come out. Hehe, the emperor. Chaoga, this little girl is very ambitious, but she is not too unpopular, which is right. Xiao Mo smiled and said, in terms of scheming, the monks are still stronger now. The old master nodded and said, it takes a lot of energy to go around in circles. What is Taoism? It is rare to meet an old friend who is willing to have a drink and chat casually with him. Feeling inspired, the old master came to a question and answer. Qin Pingan's ancestral home is a kind of Taoism in the Mud Bottle Alley. The same is true for the family mansion of Li Shixing in Fulu Street. Aluapa Mountain is in the former site of Lizidongshan. First of all, we must not move the nest. It is not a simple oil slick on the water. A leaf of duckweed swirls in the swirling water. It is not the cheap registered boat households in Hangzhou town who are not allowed to even land on the shore, but it is like a nail that penetrates deeply. Geography and heart, with a strong spirit, can really affect the customs and human sentiments of a party's water and soil for a long time. But this kind of Taoism is still temporary, superficial, not firm, and it's just traces on the snow. Mr. Sanshan Jiuhe once settled in the house next to Qin Pingan's ancestral house. After a short period of time, Qi Jingchun's old school opened about Jiazi time, and Qingtong Tianjun stayed in the backyard of the Yang family's pharmacy for 10,000 years. Going to the empty building, it will be a fleeting sight, but there are still some broken hearts and threads of affairs, which can't be regarded as Taoist. Lao Guanzhu shook his sleeves, stretched out a finger and drew a circle in the air. More importantly, it has not formed a small world with closed doors and an orderly circulation. Of course, this is what they do on purpose. If they have to, they don't want to. Just like when I observed Taoism in the East China Sea, I deliberately left a wellhead in Daquan Mirage City and didn't really close the door. Do you know why the most holy masters can't beat the Taoist ancestors? It's because even if the Haoran world only respects Confucianism, there are still hundreds of schools of thought. For the most holy masters, every family's knowledge is a burden. 100 flowers bloom beyond a tree, and the scenery is gorgeous, and the owner has to pay the price of seeing the beautiful scenery of a courtyard every day. Hao Su, the criminal officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, once used one of the flying swords of his life, Chanwan, to transform Hao Kai in order to break the road between the bright moon and the wild world. After that, Jian Shuhao lived here for a period of time just to erase the Dao mark, lest the great monks in the Qingming world come here to observe the Dao, and based on this context, it is deduced that a natal flying sword is more. The truth is that he has developed a winning move early, which will make Hao Su lose the first mover advantage early when he asks people about the sword. The mountaintop Qi trainers, except for a very few, are happy to have several killer tactics specially aimed at sword cultivators. The old Guanzhu waved his sleeves and presented pictures of landscapes in wild places. As for this kind of passing, don't look at the great changes at the moment. In fact, if the local people are injured, they will soon heal themselves and gradually disappear. It was the sword cultivators of the Great Wall of Sword Qi who were guests in the wilderness, stopped and walked along the way and walked through 10 places. Zhongmen White Flower City, Ancient Battlefield Site Longhong, Dua Qingshan Yunwen Dynasty Jade City, Chunjian Mountain Fairy Hairpin City, Jiuchuan Sect Heluo River Tuyue Mountain and Bright Moonlight. Back then in the secret territory of Luzhou in Beiju, the Daoist grandson, who was a guest of Haoran Zuanduguan once taught Dao Yuchen a similar truth. Before that, Qin Pingan had thought about a problem. Not the kind of shallow taste but an attempt to trace the origin. At the water god temple on the boundary of Tsangyun Lake, Qin Pingan and Diyu met by chance, and after getting to know each other, they asked the latter a dilemma about the dilemma of the heroes who saw the injustice and drew their swords. It's just that not long ago Lu Min, who was temporarily unknown in the Qingwan country's study, when he saw Qin Pingan's remarks, was nothing more than wanting to prove that he had been in the world. The old master turned his head and asked, Wang Yunlu, as a teacher, let me ask you a question. It has been 10,000 years and the years have been long enough. Why are there so many smart people in the world during this period, countless talents and heroes and 15 achievements? There are still only 3 people on Jingdao Road. Is it just that there is one more one? Is it that difficult? Wang Yunlu, who was squatting back in his original position, seemed to have his hands in his sleeves, but in fact he carefully studied the greeting gift in his sleeves. It must be a magic weapon that started in the rank. Isn't it impossible for a half-immortal soldier? If it wasn't for the gift-giving senior Xiao Mo who had not left yet with Wang Yuanla's usual behavior, it would be like getting a piece of gold. Hearing Master's question, Wang Yuanlu answered honestly, the ancestors of the 3 sects have perfect virtues and no omissions in their practice. They have opened up 3 avenues for the human world. Xiao Mo smiled. The old master said, speak human words. Wang Yunlu murmured in a low voice, the truth in the book is not human. This thin Taoist priest, who used to be one of the 10 young candidates in the world, was born in the line of rice thieves. Have guts. Of course, the Taoist priests who can hide when they are in trouble, if they really encounter those who cannot escape, as long as Wang Yunlu chooses to take action, it will definitely kill him. Lao Guanju smiled and said, "There are guests here. You are the great disciple of the master and behave well. Is the immortal weapon in your sleeve warm? If you remember correctly, you haven't given it to the master. Present?" When Wang Yuanlu heard that the gift was actually an immortal soldier, he immediately became full of energy and suddenly became eloquent, as if he was sorry for this precious gift if he didn't say a few words. The patriarchs of the three sects, they are the geniuses among the geniuses on the road of cultivation, and they have the first mover advantage, just like the person who is the most proud in the world wrote a poem, raised his head to look at the bright moon, and the person who wrote the poem behind then wrote about the bright moon. Poetry, there is no way to do it, it is very disadvantageous. It is meaningless to write looking up at the bright moon, and it is easy to not be scolded for plagiarism. It's better to write about the sky and the moon, it will be very bold, and if you change it to practice, the Tao will be small. They each occupy a world. The great Tao operates as one, the heaven, earth, yin and yang, three talents and five elements, the sun, moon, stars, mountains, rivers and rivers, all sentient beings are walking on the Tao, and there is no way to escape the rut. Thousands, the ascension realm is only on the top of the mountain and the 14 realm is still in the world. Xiaomo nodded. Lao Guanju asked, "Then do you think that if the patriarch of the three sects lived for another 10,000 years, how would he have the chance to become one of the 15 realms?" Wang Yuanlu was silent for a moment, then said softly, "It's better to change a site similar to the latest colorful world, it must be big enough to carry the Tao. Sword training, martial arts, 3 religions in one, and ancient supernatural powers, there are only 4 paths I can think of. Why can't the ancestor of Tuyue Mountain in the wild world be in the 15th realm?" Because Qin Qingdu joined hands to observe Long Jun, and asked Jiantuo Yueshan together, the co-owner of the demon clan on earth missed the best opportunity to unite with the wild world. More because after that, there was the Sword Qi Great Wall that could not fall, and the 100,000 strong mountain that took root in the wild, which led to the incomplete avenues in the wild world. The ancestor of Tuyue Mountain was unable to reach the top for a long time, which gave Zhou an opportunity later. And these 2 places, the Taoist Temple of the East China Sea, which is located in Tonggishao, where the master of Bixiao Cave is located, or the top sect of Haoran similar to Longhu Mountain in the Middle Earth, Xuandu Temple and Huayang Palace outside the Baiyujing in the Qingming world, are very different situation. These sect prefixes, even if there are 14 monks in charge, and the Confucian Temple and the Baiyujing, still have a clear distinction between the primary and secondary, and the difference between the ruler and the minister. However, the Great Wall of Sword Qi and the Shirwanda Mountain were not the same. They were abruptly slashed from the barren world to a large piece of land, and they belonged to the way of Tuyue Mountain. Lao Guanju smiled and asked, "Xiaomo, do you know why Daozu appeared in Baidi City?" The new title of Xiaomo, the old Guanju shouted very smoothly. Xiaomo shook his head. Lao Guanju sighed. "Xing Juzhong is a very strange person, and he has always wanted to prove that he is not a Taoist ancestor." Xiaomo asked, "If you want to understand whether the answer is yes or not, will City Lord Jing come to counter the guest?" The old master laughed, and he really had to chat like this. Xiaomo wondered, "Can it be done?" Lao Guanju said with a smile, "Whether it succeeds or not, you have to try it before you know." Just like when he was watching the Taoist temple, he used the whole lotus flower blessed land and the small lotus cave where the Taoist ancestors sat, and asked for thousands of years to try to turn the world upside down. It is said that in the Qingming world today, in the long run, the greatest threat to Baiyujing in the eyes of Lao Guanju is actually the Yaya Peak that Zhang Fenghai and Wufu worked hard to join together. Parting ways with Baiyujing has both name and reality. This is a real Taoist world. If the big headmaster Ko Ming follows the old path of being a master and respecting the Taoist ancestors, even if he returns to Baiyujing, it will be difficult for him to become one of the 15 realms. Unless Yudo came to take a sword-fighting excursion early, and all the Qi trainers led by Zhang Fenghai and hard work would be cut down and rooted, and then the Runyue Peak would be razed to the ground and completely smashed. But this is not in line with Yudo's style of doing things. Because Yudo likes to talk about things and only talk about right and wrong. In short, in Yudo's view, in the whole world, there is no difference between inside and outside the Baiyujing, and there is no distinction between mountains and mountains. As long as the wrongdoer falls into the hands of Yudo, no matter who you are, what your background is, whether you admit your mistake now or not, and whether you correct it in the future has no meaning. Besides, Kuei and Zhang Fenghai can't support each other for a long time and resist Yudo's repeated interceptions, so what if there is another Jing Juzhong who is a spoiler out of thin air? If the general trend of the world cannot help Lu Xian not enter the game, the red dust is involved in karma, and it is difficult to maintain a state of heaven and earth. Lu Xian is one state or even several states. How should Lu Xian deal with himself? What about stepping into the 15th realm that seems to be only one step away? There is no doubt that Jing Juzhong is an extremely pure seeker. However, this did not prevent Jing Juzhong from breaking a jar and smashing it, so that the entire Qingming world was covered with heavy Dao marks after he scattered 2, or even 3 Jing Juzhong of the 14th realm. Enough to change the world of Qingming. Once Jing Juzhong still has a backhand, will he break and stand up again? The number of chess pieces in Yudo and Bai Yujing of course is extremely large, but there are still numbers and the number is not infinite. Once the game is played, the pieces in the chess tank at Yudo's hand will become less and less and occasionally increase, but the general trend is still to make ends meet, decrease and decrease. But Jing Juzhong, as long as he ensures that he will not be beheaded by anyone, and that he will not end up in a dead end, then even if Jing Juzhong has far less chess pieces than Bai Yujing, his chessboard is the entire Qingming. The world, even Howren, Wuxia and Wilderness, and the number of pieces in the chess jar can continue to increase more and more. There is a new martial arts temple in the Qingming world, and I, Jing Juzhong, are like the first deity hanging in the middle of the portrait. When the world is in chaos, the smoke of gunpowder in the 14 states will be the endless incense dedicated to this brand new martial arts temple. The old master looked up and looked into the distance. I'm afraid, Jing Juzhong and Zai Tianzhomi have long been in collusion, and they are the same people. This collusion does not mean face-to-face discussions. If this is the case, I believe that Jing Juzhong must have gone to the Confucian temple Gongdalan long ago. It's a kind of tacit understanding. The two sides don't need to say a word or a word at all, and it doesn't even delay them being rivals for a while. As long as we do our own way, we will go our own way, but one day we will reach the same goal. Lao Guan pointed his finger on the tabletop. An ant condensed at the fingertip, and the water ripples were like a lotus blossom, and finally it was shaped into a picture scroll with clear veins. The ant was like crawling on a large piece of paper with heavy ink marks, and the ant was in a cumbersome maze that bumped into walls everywhere and had to make frequent detours. Lao Guanzhu smiled and said, "The puppet, if you don't know that you are the puppet, you are freedom. The Tao has no compensation. Or it can transcend the barriers of words and languages. Or it can drag the world's people's hearts upward by one's own strength. It is a kind of Tao." After a long time it passed by, drinking water and forgetting the well digger. You don't need to know who the brewer is when drinking, the wine is fine, that's all. Xiao Imo raised the wine bowl and said with a smile, "Worry again and again, there is wine to drink." Lao Guanzhu laughed, "Little Imo, now you can persuade you to drink, it's amazing." Xiao Imo did not dare to be greedy for merit and explained, "I just learned a few things from your son." Hearing the words, the old master immediately turned his head and spit on the ground. Sword of Coming Chapter 1061. Years apart from the palace. The stork tower on the shore, the dragon's stone resting in the water. Wu Shuangjiang personally entertained the guests and went out to greet the 3 masters and apprentices, who came quietly. Ascension Realm Sword Cultivator, Female Ghost Fairy Treasure Scale, one of the 10 candidates in the Qingming world. Walking by the river together, Wu Shuangjiang had already used the means of isolating the heaven and the earth to prevent the partition wall from having ears. Of course, the wall was a little thick. One side was the Sueju Palace and the other was Bai Yujing. Baolin said indifferently, "Palace Wu, they are my new disciples, Lu Yi and Qiu Yi. After so many years, only 2 of them have been accepted and they will be handed over to you in the future." The eyes of the 2 young sword repairers were full of curiosity when they saw the famous Suichou Palace Master. There is no fear on the face after all, they are the direct disciples of Baolin. Master dares to fight with the really invincible sword game after game. As an apprentice, you can't just shrink when you see a great cultivator of the 14th realm. Wu Shuangjiang nodded with a smile. "I will personally preach for them. In the future, when they have the ability to protect themselves, they will be able to start a sect. There will be 2 mountains and 2 paths, one for swordsmanship and one for swordsmanship. Fu formation. With the Fu Lu formation I can barely make it into the hall. Compared to the handful of Taoist priests on the mountain who rely on this for food, I am certainly inferior, but if I want to say that I am among the best in the world, it is still possible. In terms of Qiu's meaning, it is more suitable for cultivating the talisman formation, and Lu Yi can concentrate on practicing swords. Baolin took out a secret book from his sleeve that had been treasured for many years and said, "You must teach Qiu these meanings." Wu Shuangjiang took over and said with a smile, "The ugly words are in the front, of course I can teach and I can guarantee that it is no worse than someone who teaches in person, but the problem is that with Qiu's implied aptitude he may not be able to learn all of it because of his poor mind and years in the mountains. Yes, it is estimated to be 70% to 80% of the heat. But when the mountain is established in the future, Qiu Yi's talisman array will be incense, and it's enough to accept a good apprentice." In the days when Bai Yujing had only 3 cities and 6 floors, Qingming had 4 close friends who walked the world together. Yu Dou Lu Chongzhou, a dirty Taoist who is proficient in talismans, Xing Lu, a formation master with the Taoist name Tianqi, and a female sword fairy, Bao Lin. As a result, Yu Dou became the second disciple of Daozu, and finally entered Bai Yujing as the second headmaster. And now the predecessor of the owner of Ziki building Jiangzhaomo is Lu Chongzhou. So the secret book that Baolin gave to Wu Shuangjiang today, the Taoist method contained in it, is naturally the lifelong effort of the formation master Xing Lu. Baolin asked with a heartfelt voice. "Wu Shuangjiang, you said last time that in order to shake the foundation of Bai Yujing, you need at least 3 cultivators of the 14th realm with enough killing power, and you must be prepared to never return. Can't you tell me the truth? Besides you, there is also Xian Duguan Sun Huizhong, who is the last person." Wu Shuangjiang shook his head and said, "Sun Guanzhu is not among the 3. The implication was that Gao Gu, whose Taoist name was Jiue, was among the 3. Baolin sighed faintly and asked, "I have a personal grudge with him, so you can count Sun Guanzhu and Gao Gu, seem to be." Wu Shuangjiang shook his head, "Only you and I are the kind of pure personal enmity, not Daoist Sun and Palace Master Gao." Baolin was too lazy to get to the bottom of it since he had made up his mind he didn't care about it. Although Gao Gu had many disciples, he had no children in this life, and the little disciple he had high hopes for was from the Hongnong Yang clan in Yuzhou, and Gao Gu always regarded him as his own. And Zuanduguan's son Daicheng's junior brother and junior nephew, especially the relationship between senior sister Wang's son and her junior brother, even the sword cultivator Baolin, who likes to inquire about the news on the mountain the least, has heard of it. Although the heaven and the earth are isolated, Jiang Feng still blows his face, gently brushing the hair on the temples of the female sword Immortal, a pair of autumn eyes, and his eyes are very firm. This female sword Immortal at the peak of the Ascension realm, even if she is a ghost, still loves the Taoist companion deeply. Wu Shuangjiang turned to look at the river flowing eastward. Soldiers are in the form of water they avoid high and go down, and in the form of soldiers, they avoid the real and attack the virtual. The world is no longer a one-man world. Then it's hard to say who's in the world next. Daozu left the way, and the name of the great headmaster Ko has not returned. He is really invincible. Yudo Abbot Bai Yujing has been in business for 100 years. Lu Chen has not yet woken up from his dream. Indispensable. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, "If Yudo is not invincible enough, I have spent so much time planning for so many years, so deliberately targeting him, but I never dare to fight him head-on. Isn't it better than the clown jumping on the beam?" People all over the world use "really invincible" to talk about things, just because the only one who can criticize Yudo is this matter. What's more, the nickname "really invincible" was originally given to Yudo by the outside world, not Yudo's self-proclaimed name. Aware of the vision outside the sky, Baolin looked complicated and asked curiously, "I know that Jing Juzhong from Beidasheng is very powerful, but is he really that powerful? How powerful is Jing Juzhong? If he doesn't become his enemy, he will never know the truth." Wu Shuangjiang didn't raise his head and smiled. "Dao X and Dao F, fighting X and fighting strength. Mr. Jing is very good at it. Treasure scales are only silent." Wu Shuangjiang said, "Daoist Baolin, since you are an ally of sincere cooperation, I will take you to a place where we are in the palace. For so many years, it seems that no one has been there except Xiaobai. Church and Stork Tower, the threshold here is much higher." Baolin nodded. "It's good to have a long experience." Wu Shuangjiang took the first step, followed by Baolin, and in the vast white mist he came to a secret landscape of mountains and rivers, and there was not even a trace of spiritual energy in the small world. As for the 2 young sword cultivators who looked like a pair of beautiful people, they were left in place. A small mountain not high, surrounded by clouds and fog. There is a shop at the foot of the mountain, and a radiant but dim-eyed old man is sitting at the table, basking in the sun and smoking a dry cigarette. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and explained to Bao Lin, "The name of this mountain is a match. This shop is called the Engagement Shop. It is the first in the world. It's been a long time. There is a canopy bed with exquisite workmanship and extremely cumbersome work in the house. Wu Shuangjiang personally creates a small part every year, carefully sculpting it and can't be in a hurry. It was one of the dowries he prepared for his daughter." Wu Shuangjiang greeted him with a smile. "Mr. Kai, the distinguished guest next to me is Jianxiu Treasure Scale." The old man surnamed Kai glanced at Treasure Scale, sighed softly, looked pitiful and said slowly, "It's rare to see a woman as deeply rooted as you." Baolin didn't know how to answer for a while. She is not the kind of cultivator who is knowledgeable. She has only concentrated on practicing swords all her life, so the old man surnamed Kai, who knows about the matchmaking mountain engagement shop, is no different from not knowing. Wu Shuangjiang took out a satin bag overflowing with precious light from his sleeve and placed it lightly on the table. Bai Yujing has been keeping an eye on it in recent years, so the harvest is mediocre. The old man glanced at the bag and nodded. "It doesn't matter, it's enough to have the hair of a woman in a colorful world. Blue silk is one thing and it never counts." Having said this, the old man raised his eyes and looked at Balin's bun. The old man's turbid eyes suddenly shone brightly as if seeing a treasure. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, "Friend Baolin, are you willing to cut a strand of blue silk and give it to Mr. Kai?" Baolin actually did not doubt Wu Shuangjiang's intentions at all, and did not ask the other party to ask for the use of his hair. He directly put his fingers together, cut a strand of blue silk and placed it on the table. It is necessary to know that the soul, flesh and blood, and even the hair and nails of the cultivator, once fall into the hands of the enemy, it will easily lead to an unpredictable catastrophe. Wu Shuangjiang and Baolin were sitting at the table. The old man had already put away the satin bag full of the woman's hair and a strand of blue silk from Baolin. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, "Mr. Kai used to be the ancient who was in charge of the marriage book in the human world. His status is not high, but what Mr. Kai is in charge of is to hold that red thread. For us men and women, it doesn't matter whether it's important or not. It is self-evident. And women's blue silk is love, and it is one of several key materials used by Mr. Kai to refine the red thread. Of course a rope would be better." In fact, Wu Shuangjiang didn't say enough detail. The world's crazy men and women, or from love to hate, can be refined into red ropes, but the quality of men's hair is not as good as women's. In addition, Qingxi has years. The deeper the affection and the longer the years, the higher the rank. But there is a paradox here. First of all, the 100-year longevity of the common man under the mountain is a rare old age. Furthermore, how to ensure that a love and nostalgia will not change from thick to thin with the passage of time. Secondly, Qi practitioners on the mountain are often pure-hearted and have few desires. And the men and women who become Taoist couples on the mountain use deep and shallow love. Not because they are immortals, they are not deeper, but they are not necessarily comparable to men and women on the market, so they are like treasures. Scales and Qing Quan, who is now practicing swords at Xianxia, are really rare. Mr. Kai hesitated. Wu Shuangjiang nodded and smiled and said, "If I could have obtained the blue silk of Taoist Baolin Daoist earlier, the red thread that was held back then would have been unknowingly, maybe it was a fluke." Baolin wondered. Palace Master Wu and Mr. Kai originally wanted to help those two great cultivators lead the red line? With a smile on his face, Wu Shuangjiang said with a heartfelt voice, "The female crown Wuxia with the Taoist name Taiyin, and the Taoist priest Lu Yen of the Taoist Chunyang. One is a female cultivator of the 14th realm who is famous for her killing power in the Qingming world, and the other is a wandering Taoist priest who quit the 14th realm by herself." Mr. Kai glanced at Balin's bun, twitched the corners of his mouth and hesitated. Wu Shuangjiang couldn't help laughing and said, "If you really want to act in such a risky way, I am afraid that you will be wronged, Baolin Daoist friend, and you will not have to go out for at least 10 years. Baolin didn't think there was anything in this, just curiously asked, "Why didn't you tell me directly?" Wu Shuangjiang said, "It was a risky act and I just said a fluke. If you are not careful, you will make an enemy and end up in a self-defeating dismal end. Wu Zhou and Lu Yen, whoever provokes them will not feel good, not to mention or two at the same time. Besides, you and I were not allies back then, so I don't want to owe you a great favor. Besides, you are a sword cultivator and the city is shallow, and the means of concealing the secret has always been a shortcoming. Sui and I, it is easy to lose the big because of the small. Baolin smiled and said, Palace Master Wu just said I was stupid. Wu Shuangjiang nodded. Xianxia doesn't have to be too smart. Too smart can't become a pure swordsman. Baolin sighed. Palace Master Wu, how dare you think about it? That Lu Yen, whose Taoist name is Chunyang, has only heard some unconfirmed rumors. But the temperament of this mother-in-law Wuzhou is known to the world, and you Wu Shuangjiang, dare to calculate? I'm really not afraid that the Suichou Palace will be directly smashed by the magic weapon like rain? Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, Cultivation on the mountain has always been a case of starving the timid to death. There are occasional exceptions as long as it is not an exception. If it is true that the boat has been made, the Chunyang Lu Yen who realizes it later has a tenacious Taoism, and maybe he can cut love with a sword and become a Taoist partner with Wuzhou. But the female crown Wuzhou, but not necessarily willing to break the marriage, maybe even pinching the nose to thank Wu Shuangjiang's Old Man of the Month and lead the red line. Baolin said helplessly, this kind of thing you can say it. Wu Shuangjiang said, Dou just doesn't care about fighting anyone because of his high Dao strength. Baolin felt a little awkward. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, it is said that a long-term illness becomes a doctor and a long-term enemy becomes a confidant. Ordinary Qi practitioners may later hear about Jing Juzhong and Dou asking about it, and they may even joke about it. He is really invincible with his sword on his back and wearing a feather coat. Caught Fangting on Hanging Mountain upside down, he didn't dare to go to the Sword Qi Great Wall to see Chen Qingdu, but now even a junior like Jing Juzhong with a difference of 3,000 years in Taoist age, dared to provoke and fight. But it is precisely Wu Shuangjiang, a great mountain cultivator, who is destined to fight with you endlessly. He is also in the 14th realm. Instead, he has been careful and has been planning for a long time. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, besides cultivating Taoism when I have nothing to do, I once played a few games of addition and subtraction. Treasure Scale said, all ears are listening. Wu Shuangjiang didn't sell out. It was said that in the wild world, the most recognized existence by Qi practitioners on the mountain was Bai Zhe, who ranked first. But the second one is more interesting. It is not any of the old throne monsters, nor is it the co-owner Wei Ran, but the sword cultivator. But because there are many people who admire Bai Zhe and there are also many people who hate Bai Zhe, after adding and subtracting the two, the resulting number or the ratio cannot keep a distance from Shouchen. As for Howren world, those who practice Qi on the mountain and gain the most people's hearts are even more interesting. It's not evenly Xing, but Bai Diqing Zheng is in the middle. It is only said that there are many people in the world who are not listed in the genealogy, and in their hearts, they sincerely regard the White Emperor City as the only holy place in their hearts. There are very few Qi cultivators who hate Jing Juzhong, and there are very few cultivators in the entire world, and there are even very few genealogy cultivators who really dislike Beidasheng and Jing Juzhong. However, there is no hatred for the sages, but there are naturally many Qi practitioners who hate the red tape and heavy rules. This kind of inner rejection of the rules and the Confucian temple must of course be counted on the head of the sages, which leads to Li Xing, who came in second, was far behind Jing Juzhong. In the Qingming world, after the big headmaster Koming disappeared, there was no Taoist official who had the aspirations of Jing Juzhong or Bai Zhe. Lu Qin can be ranked first, but the gap with the next 9 people is not too big. It is only said that the latter can be roughly equal to the headmaster Lu of Bai Yujing. Baolin wondered, what's the point of calculating this? Wu Shuangjiang said with a smile, so it's just a little game of playing the light and Yin. Although Kai Dao Huang seemed expressionless, his mood was extremely complicated. Games. Back then, Liju Dongtian in half of my hometown was just such a little game that finally decided who was the one. It was decided that Qing Tong Tianjun placed the last person left at the gambling table. But at that time, the old man who opened a wedding shop in the small town dared to reveal this secret for his grandson, who fong under the eyes of Qing Tong Tianjun. Every newborn child in the town, the dragon kiln will burn a zodiac porcelain. Cast the lot first. This has been divided into good and bad life. But this does not determine the final result. Gotta be tough. Before Liju Cave fell to the ground, it was a quiz. After falling to the ground, connecting with heaven and earth is the big test. Qi practitioners who have attained the Tao in the world can Tao transform countless magical powers and wonders and visions, and influence the people of the world to varying degrees with their Tao power. So people really won't push back and come together as one? If it really doesn't work, why does the Yeapikir work hard? The women's sundial carving in the wild world, the ferryman in the Hauran world who was different from the most holy ancestors in the past, why does it exist? Baolin asked. After joining the 14 realms, what is the scenery like? Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, it's not enough for outsiders. Baolin asked again, there is only one way to join the road? Wu Shuangjiang pointed to the heights and asked back, the ready-made examples are in the sky, what do you think? Baolin asked again, the real body, the Yin god, and the outer body of the Yang god at most take 3 avenues to the top at the same time? Wu Shuangjiang shook his head and said, it can only be explained that there are at most 3 selves of the 14 realms. From a standalone perspective, if a bridge is built between 2 avenues, the roads can also be combined, or it can be described as the confluence of 2 rivers. I have always suspected that this is the earliest meaning of the saying of combining the Tao, so the road that fits with the Tao must be the more the better. For example, the master of the Bixiao cave, the road of combining the Tao cannot be classified into a single category. The reason why it is considered to be the most inferior of the 3 ways of combining Tao is that it is the most restrictive and the most deadly. Not the other way around. However, the number of roads that each cultivator of the 14th realm can take under his feet has nothing to do with the killing power of the cultivator after he joins the path. The road to reconciliation is also divided into old and new. One of the 10 heroes of the ancient world, there is a female Xiu Lan Qi, who is the founder of the world's fortune-telling masters. Therefore, in later generations, there was a saying that, the arsenal forbids soldiers and is located in Lanqi. Lanqi is a female nun and so is Wuzhou. This female crown actually turned herself into a natal thing, human appearance is empty, and the shape is between the most human and the gods. And one of the 10 heroes, there is still a Qi trainer who took the lead in practicing the ghost way. He is the first ghost in the world. And Su Jun is a ghost. Jiren have their own heaven. Just like at the end of a certain road, there is a vacant seat waiting for a Qi practitioner in the future to take a seat. Another example is the careful initiative to give way to the scale. Baolin asked, Senior Kai, take the liberty to ask, how did you view this world back then? Even if it is a female sword immortal who is among the candidates in the world, today's treasure scale is more like a Meng Tong who finally met 2 old schoolboys full of questions wanting to solve the puzzle and get the answer. There's nothing rude not to be rude. The old man laughed at himself. Unfortunately, fellow Daoist, asking this question is no different from asking Yu Bing. Baolin became more and more puzzled. The old man had to explain, I was in a low position in the past and I couldn't see the infinity at all. Treasure scale felt very strange and couldn't help but ask, could it be that infinite can be seen in full? Wu Shuangjiang said with a smile. We should first be grateful that the whole world is not a book with a 1 word for $1,000. Whoever changes a word will be rewarded with 1,000 gold. The old man hesitated for a moment and said, it can only be said that the higher the position of God, the closer to infinity what you think, what you see, and what you see. But, Wu Shuangjiang reminded, Mr. Kai, don't but anymore. In today's situation it is useless to talk too much. The old man nodded. Over Aquarius Island, there is an autumn temple that has no owner so far. Enter my Qiufeng temple, enter my Acacia gate. Those who can become the masters of Qiufeng temple must be a pair of true infatuated species. Therefore the Qiufeng temple has been in existence for many years and no one can occupy it so far. And this Qiufeng temple is actually Wu Shuangjiang and Lu Qi, together with Kai Dao Huang, the Yu Lao, who lost his divine position but kept the next marriage book. On the basis of an ancient broken secret realm, they work together to repair and build it. Even if there is a conscientious person to deduce this matter at most, it can only be traced back to Lu Qi. Moreover, Lu Qi is not an easy person and the big demon Yangji has the deepest understanding of this. Baolin said generously, do I need to shave my head? For me it doesn't matter. Touching his hair bun, he thought the statement was interesting and the scene was even more funny. Baolin laughed to himself. She forgot how many years she was and didn't laugh like this. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and shook his head. A strand of blue silk is a complete piece of love, regardless of the number of hair strands. Kai Dao Huang glanced at him suddenly. Wu Shuangjiang squinted his eyes and smiled, interlaced his hands and fingers, and after a little thought he understood the reason. Wu Shuangjiang Suichou Gong, who once killed a Taoist couple with his own hands, is where he joins the Taoist line, but he says, "May all lovers in the world be married in the end." Tong Yezhou. A secret place where visitors came and went not long ago. There is only a small hillside in the secret realm, and there is an ancient stone stele on the top of the mountain. The most surprising thing is that the ancient stele has the word, earth, written on it and heaven below it. The content of the stele is a line of ancient seals written vertically, "Never turn over." On the top of the stele there was a rusted copper coin sword. One stele and one sword will suppress all the evil spirits in the secret realm, trapped in the hillside and boundary, and will not spill out. The majestic evil spirit was washed away, like a raging flood that burst through the embankment. A burly but fuzzy man wearing a coarse linen coat came to the bottom of the hillside, slowly climbing the mountain one step at a time. The inscriptions on the ancient stele were shining brightly, and the golden light was scattered by the man waved his sleeves again and again. The sword energy of the ancient bronze money sword was surging, and it began to jump on the top of the stone stele. The ground at the top of the stele. On the other side of the mountain, an equally vague figure appeared, but it was a woman holding a bamboo basket in her hands. Just like the last time she saw the ghost Zhong Kue who entered this place by mistake, she seemed to think that she should remember something, but she just couldn't. Today the strange thoughts that lingered in her mood still made her frowning slightly. She tilted her head and thought for a while, but still to no avail. She wanted to go back. There is no trace of wear and tear in the text on the monument, but the meaning of the Tao contained in it has been reduced year by year as the years go by. Not. As long as her fingertips touched the ancient sword, the world would fire, and the raging flames would flow away like water, covering the sky and the earth. She was a scholar at the time, helped clean up the mess, and told her that she would be able to leave soon, as if it was as short as half a year or as long as a year. The man stared at her blankly and she looked at the man blankly. This is a reunion after thousands of years. The man tried to make his voice softer and said, "I have always missed you." The woman shook her head, frowned, and stared at the strange man. For some reason she was a little sad and guilty and murmured, "I can't remember you." The man smiled and said, "It's okay, I always remember it." She asked, "Why didn't you come here to find me earlier?" The man said softly, "I thought you were gone." After a moment of silence he raised his hand, clenched his fist and smashed it into his heart. The man said in a hoarse voice, "I thought you could only be here with me." The woman held a bamboo basket in her hands, stood on tiptoe and stretched out her hands to touch the man's face. The man held her slightly cold slender jade hand, clenched it in the palm of his hand, rubbed it slightly and said to himself, "It doesn't matter what you do to me. I'm your man." 10,000 years ago the skills were not as good as others and the attempts were unsuccessful. Whatever the end they would suffer. Men never complained about this matter. A man who stands upright in the sky, it's nothing to be wronged. If they were beheaded, they were beheaded. Confusion, lack of soul, confused memory, physical separation scattered all over the place, nothing. But after being beheaded he had a long period of confusion and confusion. Before that he had made an agreement with the patriarch of the three sects not to implicate the Tao companions, and they agreed. Later, after recovering to a certain degree of spiritual clarity, he learned that she had gone crazy and was still in the human world, to be precise, the underworld, causing a major disaster, and then she died on her own. What kind of calculations are taught by the patriarch, not to mention the little master and the Mr. Sanshan Jiuho, who can prove that there is no conspiracy in this matter, so he just asks her whereabouts. But the little master is good. Even Mr. Sanshan Jiuho neither gave any answers. In fact, he knew very well that the higher the realm of Qi practitioners, the more difficult it would be for them to die. The man looked down at her. "But you suffer, I'm sad." She smiled sweetly. "It's always difficult to think about it. For example, still seeing you, a man whom she still can't remember for a while, probably owes it to this seemingly murderous and punishing forbidden place. If there is no place to live, there will be no place for her to stand in the world, regardless of the yin and yang worlds." The man said solemnly, "I don't care about that. I don't care if they have thousands of reasons." The woman lifted the arm that was holding the bamboo basket and smiled softly. "I don't know why, there is always a drop of water in the bamboo basket. I don't know how many years have passed, neither increase nor decrease. The man was startled and he fixed his eyes on it. Daoist was as tall as a man, and he still needed to pay attention to it to find that there was indeed a drop of water in the bamboo basket. The man carefully stretched out his hand, condensed the drop of water on his fingertips, and then lightly tapped on the woman's eyebrows. A drop of water scattered like a lotus flower between the woman's eyebrows. In an instant, her figure swayed, and the man stretched out his hand to help her stand firm, and let her sit on the ground and rest for a while. The man stood up, took a deep breath, faced the west, put his hands together, lowered his head and murmured with a sincere heart, "Thank you, Bodhisattva, great mercy and great compassion help the suffering." Qingming World Yizhou. Difei Mountain Huayong Palace. There is a young Taoist priest near the Zushi Hall on the top of the mountain. He practiced here all the year round and closed his family to write a book. When he was young, the Taoist priest planted a pine tree with his hands, and the bark had already become dragon scales. Today the Taoist priest with the skills in his face called 3 direct disciples. The older ones are nearly 3,000 years old and the younger ones are only 100 years old. They are named Xianxia, Nanqiang and Gaofu. Xian is a fairyland, and is the largest two-way palace lord in Difei Mountain except the ancestral court Huayong Palace. The southern wall of the female crown is the spectator of the Demoguen, the bottleneck of the Jade Purity realm and the sword repairer. Gaofu is the youngest and the lowest in realm, but he has been stagnant in the nascent soul realm for many years, and he does not have any secular positions or titles in Difei Mountain and Huayong Palace. But when Gaofu formed the alchemy that year, he was led by the master to the top of the mountain and planted a young pine tree with his own hands. In addition to the 3 direct descendants, there is also an outsider. It was a tall young Taoist priest who walked out of the library on the other side of Huayong Palace's Zushi Hall. There are 10,000 volumes of books in the building, and 3,000 years of ancient times can be seen in the mountains. The book building is called Wanjunlu. It is the reading place of the first-generation patriarch of Huayong Palace. To say that the collection of books is 10,000 scrolls, it is a rich collection of books at the foot of the mountain, but it seems to be nothing on the mountain. However, all the secrets in the building are spiritual books on the mountain. Of course, most of them are Taoist books with different versions and the same content. Even so, they are still extremely impressive. Therefore, the hanging plaque is spectacular in the world, which is worthy of the name. In addition, the top floor of the Wanwan Tower is also the entrance to the 6th cave, so the unfamiliar face of this Daifishan mountain in return for reading books is to be a gatekeeper. But in fact, who dares to trespass on the ground Lung Mountain? Even if someone dares, how many people can walk to the top of the mountain alive and stand outside the library? From this, it can be seen that the palace lord Gao Gu did not regard this outsider as an outsider at all. Under the shade of the stone table, the 4 of them just sat on one side. It was the first time for Xian and the others to see this high priest. If the master does not reveal his identity, no one dares to inquire and explore. Wearing the most common cotton Taoist robe, I am afraid that even the most unknown Taoist temples, the so-called permanent Taoists who have not yet been awarded the Taoist temple, can afford to wear them. Gao Gu said indifferently, "Old Zuxiguan Taoist priest, alias Mao Ju, Taoist name White Bone." The 3 direct disciples were instantly horrified and their heartstrings tightened. Although the number of 10 candidates for this year's Qingming World is indeed a bit large, no one feels that any Taoist priest on the list is not enough. In fact, many of the candidates this time have been among the top 10 in history, or are recognized as having the strength to be selected, but they have not been included in the evaluation for various reasons. And the only candidate on this list who only has a Dao number but no real name is the real White Bone. The most interesting thing is that the whole Qingming World and even all the world, the mountain knows that this White Bone real person is one of the 5 dreams of the Baiyu Jinglu headmaster. Gao Gu asked straight to the point, "Mao Jue, who do you think is suitable for the current mountain master?" Mao Ju said calmly, "The mountain master? Not the palace master of Huayong Palace?" Gao Gu said, "It's the chief of the mountain. If you just want to be the owner of the Earth Lung Mountain, the south wall is relatively suitable." Mao Ju said bluntly, "Gao Fu has enough qualifications. In fact, it is better than Nanqiang, but it is a pity that Gao Fu's Dao heart is too weak and can't stand a little turbulence. My heart is broken, or when I meet the surnamed Wu in the Suichou Palace, it is even more pitiful. I am afraid that I can't even figure out who I am." Xian carefully glanced at Shizhuan. Is it really okay for outsiders to say that little brother? The female crown Nanqiang heard that the legendary white-boned real person actually recommended himself as the mountain owner. His Taoism did not fluctuate much, but he was just curious. For the Taoist couple? Otherwise, a jade realm, the mountain owner of the local Feishan mountain? Thank you for being able to figure it out. As for Xian, she is too old and her realm is too low. Apart from respecting teachers and respecting Taoism, at least in my opinion, it is useless. Xian breathed a sigh of relief. Mao Zhu turned his head and said a few words of disrespect to himself, but God Tianjun didn't care at all. Never thought that the hair cone began to belittle the younger brother again. Gao Fu's cultivation is so unbearable. It's your fault that you are too incompetent as a master, always absent-minded, unwilling to carve him carefully, playing less boards. Gao Fu has only heard and seen the wind and rain outside, young and energetic, eyes higher than the top. 100 years of practice, too smooth. Many others hold him stinky feet. Forget about it. In fact, he is young. He is already full of rottenness, like a piece of stinky tofu all day long. I don't think by Yujing Zhang. Feng Hai was just like that. He just felt that Qin Yingguan of the Great Wall of Sword Qi might not be worthy of his name. I don't know how Gao Fu died. If I can return to the mountain alive, I can give Gao Fu a few bangs and apologize. Later, when he walks out the door, I can lie on the ground and pave the way for him with my hands, my boots stained. Dust, even if the sincerity of my apology is not enough. In the peaceful and prosperous world, there is nothing, just hide in the mountains and practice peacefully, occupy a cave as a dojo and get an ascension realm and then go out to suffer losses. It is not too easy to die. But once the troubled times come, he will be the mountain chief. It's okay to be beaten to death by a slap. But I'm afraid that the entire Difei Mountain and Huayang Palace will be affected and turn into an old almanac. Gao Gu, I'm just wondering, what do you think? You always like to compare him with some other disciple. How can a living person compare with a dead person? When Mao Zhui said this, he smiled and said, I'm done, you can go back and read. As for Gao Fu, who was said to be more useless than his senior brother Xian, he was not angry, but just faced the other side of the mountain with grievances on his face. Yes. He is not a fool. How could he not know how absent-minded Mao Zhui said about Master? It is true, Master just likes to compare him with that little brother who died from the first day he went up the mountain to cultivate. It was like this from the beginning. So many of the small mistakes were actually intentional by Gao Fu. He just wanted to say a few more words to the Master, even if he was scolded a few times, but it would not make the Master feel disappointed in him. Hair Cone was about to stand up. Gao Gu said, then let Gao Fu be the mountain master. Mao Zhu laughed angrily. What a lonely man, since you already have a conclusion in your heart. Are you wasting my saliva? Gao Gu smiled and said, just listen to what an outsider says. Mao Zhui stood up and gave Gao Gu a thumbs up. Gao, if I want to let Lao Tzu fart in the future, even if I am a fool. Gao Gu smiled and said, the choice of the mountain master is already available. The new palace master of Huayang Palace, Palace Master Mao. Why don't you sit down and talk more? Mao Zhu stared at the lone man, and after making sure that the other party was not joking, he sat down again and asked softly, why is this? Gao Gu stood up. The three of you continue to chat, I have something to do. Xian, follow me down the mountain and chat as you walk. Xian's eyes were flushed. She stood up and bowed her head. This disciple respects the law of the master. The two masters and apprentices walked down Zufeng together. Xian said in a trembling voice, Master, it's all because of the stupidity of the disciples. To this day they still haven't been able to certify and ascend. Gao Gu said indifferently, the Taoist only talks about the level of the realm, which is meaningless. For so many years inside and outside the Difei Mountain, you have been doing things and there are some things that are wrong. There are more things that you do well and there are disciples like you. It's the blessing of being a teacher. Xian would rather not hear these heartwarming words, even if it is a few decades and hundreds of years later. It is better that Xian will not hear such words in his life. Even if the disciple is gone, the master is still there. Gao Gu smiled, stretched out his hand and patted the arm of the disciple next to him a few times. Master is such a cold-faced and stubborn person who likes to make trouble with himself and outsiders. You disciples, you can only take more care of yourself. Already. Xian suddenly burst into tears and couldn't help herself. She was actually struggling. She just wanted to stabilize her mind, strengthen her spirit, and accompany her master down the mountain. Unexpectedly, Gao Gu patted the disciple on the shoulder. then took the lead to sit on the steps and said with a smile, Xian, accompany master to see the old scenery. Gao Gu patted his knees, raised his head and smiled. A human body is rare and a good sword will not die in a box. The eyes are as big as the sky, the moon is dark and the wind is high at night, covering the nose and the stinky and rotten field of the world. Xian, don't let this lung-like mountain become such a field that will only cover the noses of passers-by. The spirit of cultivating the Tao and the fairy spirit of attaining the Tao must of course have it, chivalrous spirit and warm stomach. You are willing to go to the quagmire outside the mountains to fight a few vulgarities and courage. You must cherish such fools, protect the Tao well, and let the realm of this group of Taoist priests in Huayang Palace be higher and higher. Difei Mountain is recognized as an excellent dojo. It is the first of the 72 blessed places and has a sixth cave, one of the 36 small caves. The spiritual qi outside the mountain gathers into a rolling sea of clouds, and when it is retracted and released, it is like a human breath. The Tianshi Mansion in Haoranlonghu Mountain is as famous as the Huayang Palace in Qingming Difei Mountain. It is also the only one in the world of Gaoxian and the plumes are gathered. In Difei Mountain, there are more than 800 buildings of various sizes, such as palaces and pavilions, altars on terraces, Maoan Daoyuan and Danjing bridges. There are as many as 9,999 houses in total. During temple fairs, there are hundreds of thousands of good men and women who come here to pray for blessings, eliminate disasters and burn incense to fulfill their vows. The current owner of Difei Mountain and the palace owner of Huayang Palace is one of the 10 people in the Qingming world, Gao Gu with the Taoist name Jiue. In fact, in the history of Difei Mountain, there have been incidents of overwhelming guests and masters. There was a Taoist temple that overwhelmed Huayang Palace and snatched the title of Mountain Master. It was only when Gao Gu took over as Palace Master that he regained the title of Mountain Master for his own Dao lineage. Today in the realm of the Earth Lung Mountains a gate has been opened and stepping into it is another Earth Lung Mountain. It is Gao Gu's great supernatural powers which can transform the real world into a small world. This cave inside the gate is like the tens of thousands of Taoist officials in the mountains have been migrated. Except for the patriarchal halls of the various palaces in the mountain, the rest of the buildings, scenes, and even the orderly circulation of heaven and earth aura have nothing to do with the truth. No difference. If a cultivator cultivates qi here it will have real effects, but as long as he walks out of the gate he will fall into a bamboo basket and draw water to an empty end. Qi practitioners outside the Dailung Mountains have been climbing through the door one after another today. Before going up the mountain there will be a Taoist priest of Huayang Palace at the door, who will distribute an elixir to each outsider. Of course you can refuse to accept it, but regardless of their status and realm, almost all Taoist officials who come from afar will silently accept the elixir and fight it again. He bowed his head as a thank you and return gift to Huayang Palace. Difei Mountain Huayang Palace has established a set of rules for the patriarchal hall since the first generation of patriarchs established a sect. The mountain masters of later generations need to hold a Taoist meeting every jiazi. The monks are not limited by their status as long as they are not the kind of vicious people they can come. Daifishan listened to the preaching of the master of Huayang Palace. At the same time, every outside qi practitioner who entered the Earth Lung Mountain realm could obtain a rare medicinal pill secretly made by Huayang Palace for free. Therefore, in the 14 states of Qingming in history many qi practitioners, especially the low-level Shanzai Xiao and Shaogua Daoguan, most of them are purely for the medicine that is invaluable to them, made a special trip to Difei Mountain. At the same time, there are also Taoist officials with good qualifications who just lacked an immortal fate. After listening to the preaching of the master of Huayang Palace in Difei Mountain, they overcame difficulties on the way of cultivation, broke through the bottleneck and they were like broken bamboo and brave and diligent. When it was passed on to Gao Gu, the Dao society expanded in scale and was classified. For the lower 5 realms, the middle 5 realms and the upper 5 realms, there would be a Dao meeting for each jiazi. So within 60 years, Gao Gu will personally preside over a Taoist meeting every 20 years. But the most surprising thing is that Gao Gu's preaching method is suspected of being impersonal. Because every time Gao Gu taught the Daoist method to the practitioners of the lower 5 realms, he only talked about the practice tips of the middle 5 realms, and preached to the practitioners of the middle 5 realms, but he talked about the cultivation scenery of the upper 5 realms. Qi practitioners, teaching careers and solving doubts, turned to talk about the key points of Taoism in the lower 5 realms. In the early days when Gao Gu became the owner of Difei Mountain because of his inconsistency, he attracted countless criticisms to Huayong Palace. But over time, in addition, every Taoist meeting will be presented with unique secret elixir of different ranks. Therefore, even if the teaching method is false and useless for one's own practice, the medicine pill is real. Even if he doesn't need it, it doesn't matter if he converts it to sell for money or gives it to the younger generation. Fortunately, Gao Gu is recognized as the #1 alchemist in the Qingming world. Otherwise, the loss of this medicinal pill alone would not be able to toss any top sect except the Baiyujing. When Gao Lone sits on the steps, in fact there is still a Gao Gaiyong standing in the corridor on the top floor of the Wanwan building, leaning on the railing with another real person with white bones. Because it is already in the 14th realm. Over the years, Gao Gu has occasionally gone out, but it is not the true body of Yin, Yang and Shen. Gao Gu said, Yaxing once said that the master said, I am good at raising aura. Therefore, that swordsman A Liang can improve a kind of sword energy for 18 stops. Yaxing had traveled the Qingming world for many years and finally took the Yuanyu from here. The white bone master nodded and said, on the one aspect of qi refining, Yaxing is the top expert, and even if it is made public, other than Confucian scholars, the higher the monk's realm, the less he can learn. I don't know how that a Liang did it, let him sword cultivators can learn it. Baigu Jinren asked curiously, your method of combining Tao is not relying on alchemy, right? Gao Gu said, it doesn't count, it doesn't count. The white bone master stomped his feet lightly and asked in doubt, isn't it really refining this? Gao Gu Road is called Jiue. In the world of Qingming, mountain transport is far more than water transport. Taking Difei Mountain as an ancestral dragon mountain range, refining Difei Mountain and the many branches that spread out. Gao Gu smiled and said, if such a big disturbance is really going to happen, will Bai Yujing just let it go? Seeing that he didn't want to say more, Bai Gu Jinren didn't ask any more. After all, the less the outside world knows about the path of the 14th realm cultivator, the better. Gao Gu asked, if you want to cut off Lu Chen's road to the 15th realm, and you can become yourself without any worries, what will you do? The white bone master reached out and stroked the railing, silent for a moment, then slowly said, painting a scoop according to the gourd, learning from the eldest sword Immortal and the old blind man in the wild world, and entering the 14th realm on Leap Moon Peak, relying on the hard work of martial arts, getting a share can be unreasonable. The great avenues sheltered him, steadily stabilized his realm, and continuously transformed the surrounding heaven and earth, becoming a climate, forming a situation where the tale could not be lost, such as a beautiful face with an extra scar. The major sects in the 14 states of Qingming rose up one after another, and kept breaking away from the Taoist officials. Genealogical ultimatum, independent portal, and completely draw a clear line with Bai Yujing relying on this. Seems to be trying to say the most apt metaphor. Gao Gu answered and said, cut the world. Previously in the Bright and Bright Moon, the master of Bixiao had a candid review and discussion with his nephew Lu Chen. How difficult is it to kill Lu Chen? One-person Taoist method separates the 5 dreams and 7 hearts. How spectacular the weather is. But earlier Qin Pin Gan's seemingly unintentional school book statement just hit Lu Chen's weakness. For 3,000 years relying on a white jade capital, Lu Chen has always been aloof and independent from heaven and earth. The Qingming world is like a Taoist book, and Lu Chen, who goes with the flow, can read the contents of the book at will and can also close it at will. This is the advantage of a book turner. But once Lu Chen has to enter the game in person, it is like becoming a book writer who does not stop writing. Just like the entire Qingming world, it will be a quagmire that Lu Chen is deeply immersed in. No matter how advanced Lu Chen's Taoism is, no matter how many methods you have, what you do is wrong in the end. There is no solution to this deadly situation, and there is no solution. Even if the general situation in the world can be flat, only Lu Chen has a Taoist heart. In the market, some people have a cleanliness addiction or an extremely powerful obsessive-compulsive disorder that belongs to self-restraint. For cultivators, the pursuit of a flawless Tao heart is actually the greatest habit of cleanliness. The female crown Wuzhou, Gao Gu, Sun Huizhong of Zuanduguan, Wu Shuangjiang of Swichugong, Jianxian Baolin, etc. These great cultivators who are very uneasy with Bai Yujing actually have a good relationship with Lu Chen. Lu Chen has no real enemies in this world. Yu Dou, who can stop killing by killing, correcting mistakes, has nothing to do with his own Taoism, can wear cassocks, carry an immortal sword or appear in the 14 states or sit in Baiyujing. By virtue of this merit he has reached the 15th realm. But only Lu Qian can't do it, and he can't go this way. If it is said that De Zhangjiao Ko Ming's Wu Wei is a kind of transformation that best fits the Taoist ancestors' great achievements, but Lu Qian actually has a very subtle difference between the Daoist and the Master Taozu. As long as the world is in chaos, you Lu Qian, as long as you have the height of your own Taoism, cannot be higher than the Taoist ancestor as a master. After all, Lu Qian is still a Taoist official in Baiyujing. How to make up for the position left by Taoist ancestors in the 15th realm? In the Mingyue dojo, the master of the Bixiao cave once had a deduction of the avenues, each thread pulling each other from the point to the line, from the line to the plane. If he followed the line of the old Guanzhou, the entire Qingming world in Lu Qian's heart was a beautiful woman who was originally a peerless beauty. When he woke up, he became a woman with a pockmarked face. On the final chessboard, in addition to Gao Gu, the great cultivator who was destined to fight with Baiyujing in Yudo, there were also Li Yefeng, who worked hard, Yashanlin Jiangxian, Shanhei Jiangqing, Su Mian, and the remnant of the rice thief Wang Yunlu. Zhang Fenghai, who broke away from Baiyujing and established his own business, Yao Qing, the elegant minister of the Qingshan dynasty, and Chao Gu, who was re-examined by the road name. They will all be enemies of Baiyujing and Lu Qian. If this chessboard is erected like a wall, it is a terrifying and disgusting scabbard wall that blocks Lu Qian's road. However, Lu Qian can't continue on the road unless he breaks the wall. Almost everyone can't use their strength to support one of the biggest ideas in their hearts. The eyes are high and the hands are low. For example, I am, and so are you, fellow Daoist. You can do what you want. Over the past 10,000 years, after reading history, there are only a handful of them, wild and thorough, thoughtful, omnipotent, thin the world and fatten your own way and then go to the sky and leave. You will still be able to feeding back the wilderness. Beta Shengzheng is in the middle, and he clearly believes in the magic way. It is estimated that he will soon be able to accomplish a feat that has not been seen in 10,000 years. Selfishness, I'm afraid the consequences will be unimaginable. Among the younger generation, it seems that there are only Fei Ran and Zhang Fenghai, and Su Jun can only be considered half of them. Baigu Zhenren finally interjected, "Isn't there another famous hidden official of the last generation, Chen Shi? Not even in the eyes of fellow Daoists?" Gao Gu smiled and shook his head. He is too womanly, kind-hearted and soft-hearted. Of course, with such a person, the more the world, the better. Of course, he is still very young after all. He is really too young, so what will he do in the future and what he will achieve in the future? How tall is it? You can wait and see, fellow Daoist. By Yujing, there are still more fights to win and more fights to lose. In the world of Qingming, if there is no mistake, it is Yudo, and if there is a mistake, it is Yudo. Really heroic. 10,000 years ago and 10,000 years later, Daozu, Yudo, someone who has not yet been identified, a real hero. There are only 3 people. By Gu Zhenren sighed, Yudo is indeed invincible. If Lu Qian is replaced by Yudo, I will obediently go back to Bai Yujing and be dispatched. Gao Gu smiled and said, "It's not worth your life to be an enemy of him." In the library, the real person with white bones and the hair cone in the shade of the pine trees said, "Why come here?" almost at the same time. Gao Gu also didn't give an answer, just changed the subject and said something that could be regarded as a prophecy. "Mao Zhui, I have helped you choose the first disciple of the mountain. His surname is Mao and he ranks among the best in Thatch. He hasn't come to Defei Mountain to practice Taoism yet. You just need to wait patiently." Baigu Zhenren nodded lightly. "Gao Gu, as soon as you leave, the world will become more lonely." Gao Gu smiled and said, "Palace Master Mao, learn more from me. People don't tell me what to do today unless it's a good thing to look forward to. Everything you want will come true and your dreams can come true." Baigu Zhenren said helplessly, "I can't learn it. I am a pessimistic person." Gao Gu said, "Friend Daoist, you are not human, you are just a white skeleton." Baigu Zhenren became more and more helpless. "Gao Gu, this joke is not funny." Gao Gu nodded, "It's really not my director." The white bone reality glanced down and joked, "It's not too short, it's a pity." As soon as these words came out, the white bone real person was hit by a sleeve and flew out in an instant. A skeleton real body almost shattered on the spot and finally stood firm, all joints creaking. In this Taoist meeting, Gao Gu, as a rule, taught Taoism to Qi practitioners in the lower 5 realms. A talk about the knowledge of the soul of ordinary masters and cultivators. The second talks about the development and collocation of those Mountains of Princes, in the Small World of Qi Practitioners. 3 lectures on by Yujing's teaching of the sword and the theory of equal things. It seems to be different from Gao Gu's past preaching. It seems that the content of the Taoist meeting this time can be used by Qi trainers of the 3 realms. Gao Gu sat on a futon on the top of the mountain with an incense burner in front of him. Before preaching, Gao Gu leaned forward and lit a stick of mountain incense in the copper stove with the word Xuanda engraved at the bottom, and the incense mist rose up. Rise. Thousands of Taoist priests just need to choose a random place in the Defei mountain with different identities, a Defei mountain listening to the Haigai preacher, the fairy, the ghost and the strange. Under the mountain there are 3 souls and 7 souls in the human body. It should be like glue. It's easy to lose your soul when you don't think deeply about something in the night. You can't stare at something during the day, it's easy to hurt your mind. The heart hides the spirit, the liver stores the soul, and the lungs store the soul. Therefore the soul cannot fly and the soul cannot descend. People who cultivate Tao have a small world, and they are no different from this. People who cultivate Tao have guarding the heart, refining the Qi, and have for mountaineering and practice. The way is not high, it is in the heart, at the foot, and on the road. The reason why it is different from the common people is that they follow the opposite way. Therefore there is a fasting of the heart, sitting and forgetting, holding one's breath and concentrating, breathing and exhaling spiritual energy, refining external objects and turning them into self-use, linking the 2 heavens and the earth, forming the golden elixir, forming the yuan-ing. The soul flying outside the body is the sky outside, the yin spirit travels far away. The soul descends to the heel of the foot to be a real person and breathes separately from the orifice, the yang. Spirit is implicated in the earth's veins, returning to the original and returning to the truth. Rising from a bridge to the sky, there will be longevity. Just the beginning of today's preaching, like the wedge of an article. A fake earth-lung mountain, thousands of Taoist priests listened intently, and some who originally came only for medicinal pills began to concentrate. That real earth-lung mountain, the tall lone who sat side by side with the disciple on the steps, stood up, smiled and muttered. 500 years of new ideas are advanced, and in 1,000 years they will become old again. Due to various problems, the address has been changed to please bookmark the new address to avoid getting lost. The content of the chapters in the web version is slow. Please download the iRead app to read the latest content. Please exit the transcoding page. Please download the iRead app to read the latest chapter. The new provides you with the fastest sword to come without anti-theft updates. The first 1061 chapters are free to read. Sword of Coming Chapter 1076. A generation of Xianxia born with a character. The country is picturesque, the characters are more romantic, and they are out of the dust table. Not to mention Xiego, even Zhang Lu Chongxing couldn't understand why Qin Pingon was nervous. Only the apprentice and Guizhujiu saw this before. In the discussion in Chunfanzhai on the Hanging Mountain that year, Qin Pingon appeared for the first time as the new hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and he was not nervous at all. From start to finish it was easy to do. No matter how small the blessed land is, it is a complete world with an orderly circulation of the great Tao. The sun and the moon rise and fall, the grass and trees wither and grow, the flowers bloom and fade, the immortals change and the darkness flows, all in this world. What's more, Qin Pingon regards Lotus Root Blessed Land as a hometown of Lizhu Cave. Lao Guanzhu has buried many veins here and he has not yet found out. He is waiting for Luopao Mountain to explore and excavate in front. Whether the trend is good or bad is all in Luopao Mountain, which is tied to Qin Pingon. According to the arrangement of this old Guan Daoist, all the exiled immortals who came here in the history of a Hua Blessed Land to sharpen their Taoism and play the world must pay a toll to the Taoist temple, that is Taoism. Collect the Tao heart of Qi practitioners into one, first gather the masters, then disperse them into 10,000, and the people in the world have their own arrangements. So these are the amazing people in the world, the people who stand out from the crowd, trying to integrate and penetrate hundreds of people. Lu Xing, a scholar of Jiazixiu, was like this for Sui Right, the disciple he taught Zhu Lian and Dinging later, Yu Zhini and Chong Qiu and Yuan Huang and Wu Jiang of the younger generation. The Taoist temple is like a Taoist tree. The earth, mountains and rivers and all sentient beings are branches, leaves, flowers and fruits. Falling is the death of all living beings, so the fruit that bears on this Tao tree is the Taoist. The overall situation has been decided and the details need to be discussed. Bigwood View Falling Garden. As the host of Qiuqi Lake, Suijun Gonghua personally cooks tea and treats guests. Compared to the previous undercurrents in Bayou Square, even if the atmosphere in the house is not as happy as the guest of honor, it is a relief. The members who participated in this second small-scale discussion were Gao Jun, Sun Wanyan with the Taoist name Lingfu, Zhou Xian who admired Lu Zhou and Pei Xiang the lord of the Fox Kingdom. There are only Zhou Xian the swordsman Chao Enai and the female master He Qizhou. In addition, the four kings and the Wuyue Shanjun were in the square outside the main hall of the Taoist temple, and the situation was a bit interesting. Beiyue Laoshanjin, who is more clumsy than Song Huaibao, whose real name is Zhang Xianshan, after becoming a god he goes by the pseudonym Wu Qiong and his Taoist name is Yu. Lao Shanjun plans to use his real name, just because he thinks Wu Qiong's pseudonym is not festive enough. Holding the teacup, Qin Pingon asked with a smile, "Your Majesty the Four Emperors, do you have any objection to the division of the clergy of Wuyue Mountain? If there is objection, do you have any suggestions?" The implication is that Tang Tiei Wei Yen and you can deny it, but a solution must be given. Tuoba Days, the owner of the grassland, said, "No objection. The Great Five Mountains are not under our jurisdiction. Now they have a clear clergy and a clear division of labor, which is very good." Dongyue Mountain Lord Zhao Yuan asked, "How to set the regulations of the city god pavilion in the world? For example, does the city god lord at all levels need to have the title of prince and prince that matches the jurisdiction?" Zhao Yuan is not greedy for power, but he is very clear that if the temple of the city god has no real power, the matter of Dongyu's jurisdiction over the ghosts and ghosts is just empty talk. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Zhao Shanjun, I said earlier that you should discuss these specific matters behind closed doors. Luopashan and I will not interfere today, and the same will be true tomorrow." Zhao Yuan nodded. Qin Pingon said, "There is only one thing that I have to finalize with you today, and I will try not to change it as much as possible in the future. The two temples of Wen and Wu, the main hall of the main hall, the side hall and the side halls on both sides, are dedicated to the two sages and the sages. This is a fixed framework, and the dates and ritual specifications of the sacrifices are all ready-made and can be copied. The head of the high school is an expert. As for who to accompany the sacrifice, of course, it is up to you to choose." Beiyue Mountain Jun Huaifu, who is in charge of the martial arts temple, asked, "The ancestral courtyard of this martial arts temple built on my mountain, the main hall master has been appointed to worship the gods, and the members who accompany the incense burners must be all peerless generals. In addition to the famous generals of various dynasties who have made great achievements in war, can you put the martial arts masters of all dynasties in? Allow them to occupy a side hall alone?" Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, "I think it's feasible." Zheng Fengzhou, who is in charge of the movement of the world, asked with a smile, "Mr. Qin, the Confucian temple accompanies the sages, whether it is a Confucian master who preaches scriptures and interprets Taoism, or a pure and mellow Confucian who is well-behaved. I believe that as long as the Confucian temple can uphold etiquette and help people's hearts, change customs, benefit the world, and you can enter the Confucian temple to accompany worship. Then a commoner who did not enter the official career before his death, never served as a high-ranking official in the court, but their moral articles can be left to future generations. Can literati be included in the Confucian temple's accompany?" Qin Pingon thought for a while, then nodded and said, "Extraordinary people should have extraordinary encounters. It's just this kind of exception you must be cautious and not too frequent. Once it gives people the feeling of being overwhelmed, it will cause the entire Confucian temple to lose its trust in the world. And let me say something more. At the beginning of the construction of Zhongyue and Nanyue Wenwu temples, in addition to the accomplices, must be carefully selected so that everyone can convince the public. It is best to control the number, do not rush to gather them all." 3672. Beiyue Laoshan Jun stroked his beard and smiled, "You have to leave some thoughts to future generations." Chao Enai nodded and said, "Originally, sages and heroes are not necessarily inferior to the past." Lao Shanjun suddenly said, "It is better to teach a man to fish than to give him a fish, Mr. Qin?" Qin Pingon nodded and said, "As for the construction of Qintian supervisors in various countries, Luopao Mountain will also give Song Shanjun of Xie and the Imperial Court of the Four Kingdoms a secret record file, which records several kinds of qi techniques. Not all qi refiners can become Wang qi. For those of you with qi, it may take a lot of effort for you to find such suitable cultivators. With qi sure in every country, The human court can supervise the visions of heaven and earth and the whereabouts of high-ranking people as much as possible. The martial arts masters who have lost their martial arts and all kinds of landscape gods in the eyes of the Qi are all walkers of the world with Qi. If there is a slight disturbance, there will be nothing to hide, so the court has the capital to find someone to turn over the old accounts, and to reward and punish according to the old rules. Tang Tie nodded, his expression soothed. If Qin Jianxian and Luopeishan just blindly favor the mountain and vigorously support the gods of the 5 sacred mountains and cultivators, then the few mountain monarchs who wear dragon robes will only be pulled over by Luopeishan and Hushan to serve as a green leaf lining this time. Safflower? Qin Pingan smiled and said, among the Qi cultivators, in addition to Wang Qi, a family thief who can restrain Qi cultivators, there are also military cultivators who secretly forged a kind of military armor pill, which can defend and attack with Jianxian Jianwan. For the sake of contradiction, the warriors hold armor pills, such as wearing armor, which is similar to the robes of Qi cultivators. In addition, the legalist monks are also regarded as one of the 4 difficult ghosts on the mountain in the outside world. So you don't have to worry about Tang Guizhu. The family on the mountain is the dominant one and the imperial court is weak. I believe the knowledge and situation here will become more and more complicated and cumbersome in the future. The young emperor of the Songlai kingdom, Huang Mian, suddenly asked. The boy dares to ask another question. In Mr. Chen's opinion, the quality of the world is fundamental, and who is responsible for it? Qin Pingan smiled and asked back. I want to say that the mysterious the situation of the world is led by a small group of people. There are very few people like them. The Juanhe Hushan faction, or you in the country of Songlai. Or are they pushed forward by the entire invisible world or go uphill or downhill? In short, everyone is caught in it and everyone can only follow the trend? Huang Mian nodded and smiled. Mr. Qin should be more detailed and accurate. Qin Pingan said, this is a very complicated issue and it will be difficult to clarify for a while, but if you shoot arrows and then draw targets, you will definitely hit 10 rings again and again, which is a taboo in debate, so you might as well shoot random arrows with double targets. Find enough positive and negative arguments, and finally count the number of arrows on the 2 targets, and when I have a certain answer in my heart, I will talk to your majesty in detail. Huang Mian clasped his fists and smiled. I'm looking forward to that day. Gao Jun couldn't help but ask. Master Chen Shan, in the Haoran world, according to the rules of the Confucian Temple, the monarch is not allowed to cultivate qi, especially not to be in the middle 5 realms. Where are we? Qin Pingan took a sip of his tea, was silent for a moment, sat on the main seat, looked out at the courtyard outside and said slowly, let you decide this matter. There is such a case in Haoran world, but there is no such restriction in Qingming world. A blessed land has a strong mountain Dao Qi, and is condensed but not scattered. Qin Pingan felt that it is better to wait and see. Tang Tie and Huang Mian were in high spirits, and when they heard the words, they hurriedly tried their best to suppress the surprise in their hearts, so as not to let their expressions lose their way. Wei Yan of Nanyuan Kingdom and Tuoba Days of the Golden Horde didn't care about this at all. They were pure warriors and could not cultivate qi and cultivate the Dao. Qin Pingan explained with a smile. In fact, if it wasn't for Chao and Zhou Xian you interrupted, I would have participated in today's discussion, and the opening remarks of the draft would not have been the phrase winners, but will be replaced by something else. The content of a sentence, the world is your world, I'm just a guest. But I guess I really wanted to say that no one would believe it at the time, and it was just a lip-syncing remark that didn't come true. Lao Shanjun smiled and said, Mr. Qin is not entirely right, he has to add a sentence at the end except for Zhang Shanjun. Song Huaibao took out a folding fan from his sleeve and pressed it against his eyebrows. Apart from being able to pretend to be poor, this Master Jade Master was able to say good things, and he had a thicker skin than himself. Chao and I smiled and said, this is because I was in the wrong first and I lacked etiquette, but it turned out to be a good thing by mistake. It should be evened out and Mr. Qin doesn't need to ask me for guilt or thank me. However, Qin Pingan smiled and shook his head. According to the knowledge of some 2 moral saints, you have to apologize to me first, and then I will thank you a few words, and it is in compliance with the rules to communicate with courtesy. It was originally a half-truth and half-false joke, but Chao and I was lost in thought and he seemed to understand. Wu Fu Chao and I has a good personality which is evident. Qin Pingan almost couldn't help but ask, has Chao and I decided that he can cultivate the Tao? If the answer is yes, Qin Pingon will ask again, if you have the will to cultivate the Tao, would you like to follow me to leave the blessed land and travel across continents? Qin Pingon can take Chao and I to try his luck at the Pushun Yunkatang in Tonggi's Hao. Qin Pingon said, the second discussion, 100 years is too long. After all, Wufu Yangshuo is limited, and some great masters who are not born at the right time may not be able to participate in their entire lives, even if they are in the golden body or even the distant travel realm. It is definitely unreasonable to hold a meeting in 30 years, but it seems that the interval is too short, so it is tentatively set for 40 or 50 years. Regarding the meeting address, I have a suggestion. It is better to keep it for a long time. The Hushan faction, which is fixed at Sect Master Gao, should not be changed frequently, otherwise it will easily give rise to some unnecessary right and wrong on the mountain. Sect Master Gao, fellow Qingxi Daoist, do you have any opinions? Gao Jun got up and made a bow. Gao Jun thanked Qin Shanzhu for his trust, and the Hushan faction is willing to take on this matter. When Gao Jun was seated again, Gong Hua said with a smile, it's good to listen to Mr. Chen's arrangements. A discussion will cost countless manpower and material resources. At least half of my family's expenses will be spent. Demugwen is just a swollen face and a fat man. Hushan faction is willing to take over this hot potato. I am too happy to have any objection, no, not at all. The first time I met the visitor Gao Jun, Lao Shanjun, who rode a white deer and held a whisk, called himself from the upper realm. At that time, Gao Jun misunderstood that this mountain had a high-minded personality and looked down on all living beings from the lower realm. When discussing matters, Guanhua, Tang Tie and the others, just because Zhang Xianshan's acting skills are too consummate, they subconsciously regarded this Beiwa Shanjun as a stalker who sees the wind, and now I know that the Jade Master is a real person. Don't show up, hide deep. Lao Shanjun stretched out his hand and rubbed the whisk and said with a smile, blessed land, is naturally not named casually, and you must not be ignorant of blessings in the midst of blessings. According to the Taoist friend Lu of the demon sect, a blessed land is called a Hua, and it is honored as an honorable name. The master of the Bixiao Cave of God deliberately restricted himself to the inferior rank and restrained his spiritual energy, which led to the world becoming an unlawful place with barren soil. Tell me about the secret, saying that the outside world in his hometown with Qin Zhenxian is between the middle and the lower class blessed land. Dare to ask Qin Zhenxian, what is the rank of this place now? Qin Pingon said, the first-class blessed land has reached the bottleneck. Zhang Shanjun sighed. It turns out that every time the weather changes, Luopeishan is throwing money. I dare to ask, how much is the amount of fairy money that is as white as snow today? Qin Pingon smiled and said, it's hard to estimate, let alone say it. Earning money is like moving mountains and spending money is like flowing water. Gao Jun was stunned and his mood was complicated. Why did Lord Qin Shanzhu discuss the matter before and didn't tell us the truth? Qin Pingon smiled and asked, what do you mean by this, so that more people can be grateful to Luopa Mountain? Song Huaibao tapped the palm of his hand with a folding fan, admiring it, and said with a smile, Mr. Qin is right to act like this. You should know the truth in the future, and sooner or later, you will know that sooner or later, Luopa Mountain will still be able to show mercy without repaying it. Good, I would like to praise Mr. Qin for being upright, bright and clear. If you don't know, you don't know. Just like Mr. Chen's own preaching before, everything is born in its own way and each is nurtured in its own way. Seeing the merits of things is called God. We all know why they are made, but they are invisible, called heaven. At the same time, it can also prevent Dumian, who is not enough of the heart, from rising to hatred. If it was a rapport like glue from the beginning and someone had an extremely good impression of someone, what should I do in the future? Keep losing points? Qin Pingon nodded and said, Song Shanjun has a high opinion and insight into people's hearts. Song Huaibao said with a smile, since Mr. Qin can be trusted, let me see lead the marriage. Although the little is lustful and virtuous and he never hides it, he puts it on his face, but he can be here with Luopeishan and Mr. Qin. Guarantee the little will never guard himself against theft. Qin Pingon smiled and said, it's just a gentleman's agreement. Song Shanjun doesn't have to swear and sign the contract. Song Huaibao's momentum weakened and he asked tentatively, if the little is getting married, it's not too much to have one wife and several concubines, right? Qin Pingon nodded and said, as long as the two parties belong to your love and I wish. Song Shanjun did not use the means of his live supernatural powers. Of course there is no problem, even if the number of Mrs. Ru in Shanjun's mansion is a little more. the description behind closed doors eyebrows, presumably outsiders can't say anything. Song Huaibao breathed a sigh of relief, smiled brightly and said, "The rough road has been laborious for years, whereas the lotus leaf and lotus flower, the mountain family work, draw the land into a river and share the harmony with Yingyan." Qin Pingon persuaded, "Games in the wind, flowers, snow and moon, sighing the strength of the old are not young." Song Huaihua smiled knowingly. "I never thought that Qin Jianxian was still a person who came from 100 flowers. This person is not a fellow person. What is a fellow person? A confidant who has no hands, can't speak such jargon. Well, as long as you're not one of those old-fashioned and pedantic Daoists, the Xia Mountain Monarch's mansion will definitely welcome Mr. Chen's visit." At the door, there appeared a middle-aged scholar with slightly frosted temples, and a sable-capped girl with red cheeks. Qin Pingon introduced with a smile. "Jiang Shangzhen Zhou Fei, who used to be in the Spring Tide Palace on the Blessed Land, is now the chief worshipper of our Luopao Mountain. Xiago, she is our second worshipper." Xiago sat on the threshold. Jiang Shangzhen stood outside the door and beckoned. "Lord Zhou, will you remember me?" Zhou Shu said with a genuine smile, "I'm impressed, keep it in my heart." Jiang Shangzhen said sincerely, "Master Zhou, please don't misunderstand Luopa Mountain because of me. I am notorious in Luopa Mountain. When I walk on the road, everyone shouts and beats." Qin Pingon said angrily, "Chief Zhou, don't argue." Jiang Shangzhen leaned against the door and said with a smile, "The owner of the mountain allows me to say one last sentence. Jiang Shangzhen is only an honest person in Luopa Mountain, but on his own site, the blessed land of Jiang's Cloud Cave in Tongyi's Hao, is not very easy to talk about. Yes, by the way, in addition to being the suzerain of Jade Guizhong, I am also a sword cultivator, a half-hearted fairyland. The second seat is dedicated to Xiago Xiagirl, but it is a genuine ascension, pure sword cultivator." The sentence is a bit long. I will say so much for the time being, and all the lords here will weigh it by themselves. The atmosphere in the house suddenly froze. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, "I'm worried that you will misunderstand, so I'll add one more sentence. I came here temporarily to join in the fun, and Miss Xie was called by me to watch the play temporarily, and it has nothing to do with the Mountain Master. To scare you? It's far from enough. It is not necessary. The sky is high and the earth is broad through the introduction of the Mountain Master. Now you are no longer frogs in the bottom of the well. You should have a rough idea of the meaning of the sword fairy in the upper 5 realms. Take 10,000 steps back and say, even if Luopao Mountain does not have us, the members of the genealogy, if we just say that we are the owner of the mountain, it is even more worth talking about." Qin Pingon waved his hand, reminding Jiang Shangzhen not to cause trouble. "Stop." Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Our mountain master is very famous outside. There are so many stories, Jianghu romance, Xianxia Jiwei, we can write several tome books." Jiang Shangzhen talked about Lu Ze's bag of gold and copper coins from his heart. Qin Pingon nodded, holding back his smile. "It's our Lu Shixian's usual style of doing good deeds without saying a word. In fact, Lu Su did another thing on his way to Old Dragon City, that is, Feijian sent a letter to Lu Mahilu, and the letter only said 2 things. Qin Yingguan was in urgent need of gold, fine and copper coins, and he took out all the family's treasury. He thought that Lu Su had advanced all the family's salary for the next 100,000 years. In the letter, I would have to trouble the old patriarch to go to the nearby Sanlang temple in person, and send a message to the Yuan family patriarch. To repay Yuan Yizhu for solving the nightmare, he can send gold and copper coins to Luopao Mountain. As for the number, we can only looking at the importance of Yuan Yi throw to the Sanlang temple anyway. 1 is also given and hundreds are also given. Qin Yingguan, who has always given favors without asking for retribution, will not mind." At the end of the family letter, Lu Su emphatically reminded the family that this matter must be kept strictly confidential and must not be leaked to the outside world. After drinking tea, Qin Pingon stood up and said, "Since Chief Zhou is here, why don't you stay here to chat a little more? I'll stay here soon. I've been a guest here and I still need me on the other side of the mountain to entertain guests." Before Qin Jianxian and Gao Zhangmen left the stage, they didn't say that today's discussion was over and there would still be the next one, so no one dared to leave Demogwen without authorization. Both Wu Kei and Qing Yuanshan were unable to participate in the more private and higher-level discussions in Luoyuan. The grumpy Wu Kei was originally angry and he wanted to say something too deceiving, but he just caught a glimpse of a certain Jianghu fellow who was still sleeping soundly in the corner and he felt relieved. The gate of Demugwan Mountain. Jiang Chu and Gu Ling planned to wait for someone here, and they all had to sincerely apologize to that Qin Jianxian for their sins, thank them again and even kowtow as long as the other party was willing. Wu Jiang stood with his sword in hand and asked, Yuan Huang, Jiang Shenxi was beaten out of Taoist temple by Qin Jianxian. If we take the risk of saving people, will Qin Jianxian be annoyed? Yuan Huang said helplessly, Are you familiar with Qin Jianxian or am I more familiar? Wu Jiang thought about it but still felt that it was not appropriate to stay here for a long time. 36 strategies are the best strategy. If you learn that Qin Jianxian has not bothered with Yuan Huang, it will not be too late to reappear. To save Jiang Shenxi who fell into the water, Yuan Huang was the mastermind. I was just an accomplice, I was just a helper. I never imagined that at this moment, the blue shirt had appeared at the door with only Pei Xiang and Zhou Xian beside him. Qin Pingon asked, If Gu Ling didn't show up today, Jiang Quan, what would you do? Jiang Quan was silent for a moment, unwilling to deceive the other party, and answered honestly, No matter whether you can draw your sword or not, as long as you see Qin Jianxian once, he will entangle him once, until Qin Jianxian's patience is completely exhausted, and he just punches me to death. Gu Ling was a little anxious. No matter how honest you are, how can you answer so honestly? But she still held Jiang Quan's arm, advancing and retreating together with life and death. Qin Pingon smiled and said, I don't say anything else. I still have the courage to listen to a few sincere words. It's good to treat people with sincerity when I go out. Do you have any plans in the future? Jiang Quan said, I have already discussed with Gu Ling, and from now on, we will join hands with Taoist companions to travel around the world. Neither of us have any major pursuits. On the rivers and lakes, I dare not say that the hero is righteous, subdues demons and eliminates demons and encounters injustices on the road. It is still okay to do a little bit of duty based on your ability, and it is very interesting to be regarded as a strange person by the local people. Qin Pingon listened carefully to Jiang Quan's description of the family affairs of a pair of Taoist couples, and finally clasped his fists and smiled. I look forward to it. I am fascinated by it. Jiang Quan was stunned. Is Mr. Qin really envious of himself? Didn't say the opposite. Gu Ling gave 1,000 blessings. Mr. Qin, just wait and see. In the future, Jiang Quan and I will definitely abide by the law, and we will do whatever we can to do good deeds in the rivers, lakes and mountains. Qin Pingon nodded and said, Yesterday is like dying yesterday and today is like being born today. We all work hard to achieve good results with good causes. He stretched out his hand again and Qin Pingon took the piano bag and a bag of money left at the base of the inner wall of the temple to the gate of the mountain. Qin Pingon smiled and said, There is not much money, don't dislike it, it's fine to buy mountain money or book money, it's a little bit of my mind. Gu Ling reached out to take the Qin bag wrapped in cotton, and Jiang Quan reached out to take the money bag. I never thought that, Qin Pingon sighed. It's ridiculous, since you have already married you should start a business. Women have to manage money. Gu Ling, it's time to show the demeanor of a housewife. Gu Ling Huai held the Qin bag and hurriedly put the money bag into her sleeve, not forgetting to turn her head to look at Jiang Quan. Is her husband unwilling? Jiang Quan was very knowledgeable and immediately nodded and said, You manage the money, you must manage the money. Qin Pingon smiled and said, According to my hometown, women with high eyebrows and eyes are blessed. Whoever gets married is lucky. As long as the husband and wife don't quarrel all the time, the family will be prosperous and honor the ancestors. Jiang Quan be cherished. Gu Ling couldn't help laughing, only to realize that Mr. Qin was so considerate and witty. Jiang Quan laughed heartily and said, By Mr. Chen's auspicious words, I, Jiang Quan, will definitely cherish luck. Qin Pingon turned his head to look at Yuan Huang, who took the initiative to come here to save people from falling into the well, and joked. That talisman was really not given away in vain. Master Chong's previous comment can be said in one sentence. Yuan Huang is really a good one. People who came out of ancient books. Yuan Huang smiled and said, The elder did not dare to resign. In the end, it is still Qin Jiangxian's knowledge of people. Qin Pingon snorted. It's a pity that young people don't go to Luopao Mountain to learn boxing. This kid Yuan Huang seems to fit in with the ethos of Luopao Mountain naturally. Qin Pingon thought for a while and said, Yuan Huang Wu Jiang, one day you too have the idea of learning boxing from a master, go to the Hu Kingdom and ask Pei Xiang, the lord of the country, to let you know Luopa Mountain can help you. You can arrange a few more choices. Don't worry, you don't have to learn from Luopao Mountain's martial arts masters. There are not many but not too many the martial arts masters in the world. These masters have different personalities and temperaments, but they are all cherished. Only I happen to know a few of them, and as long as the two of you meet you can serve tea and drink tea and you will have the name of a master and apprentice. Wu Jiang grinned and said, "It's good to be brave." Never thought of Yuan Huang next to him and said with a smile, "If I really want to find a master to learn boxing well, I must also find Mr. Chen. Other than that, I have nothing else to think about." Wu Jiang sucked in a breath of cold air. "I said a good boy Yuan Huang can do it. Why didn't he think that he could flatter him like this?" Qin Pingon smiled and shook his head. "Unfortunately with martial arts I have already close disciples. Then I don't need the name of master and apprentice. I just want to learn boxing from Mr. Qin, not a famous teacher." Yuan Huang said without hesitation. "Besides, one day Mr. Qin also thinks that I am a talented person, and he has the heart of cherishing talents. If he changes his mind and accepts me as his apprentice, in fact there is no need to change the close disciple. If a future junior brother is wronged, it is enough to have an extra little senior brother in name, and it doesn't matter if I call him senior brother in private." Not to mention Wu Jiang, who was taken aback by surprise. Pei Xiang and Jiang Quan and Gu Ling were all impressed by this person. Qin Pingon couldn't help laughing, nodded and said, "It's good to negotiate, it's negotiable." Wu Jiang sighed. "Qin Jianxian, I don't care, I won't ask for this trick from your side. You can learn boxing from various masters, the younger generation can't ask for it, but it's free from changing people to go to the teacher. Master Tao is my master, one day for the master is a father for life, and this rule of the rivers and lakes still has to be abided by. Since the master is a human being, it is not a human being to practice martial arts, and one must not be conscienceless." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Inadvertently it seems that Tao Xiang has a good apprentice. The wish has come true and the dream has come true." Before leaving, Jiang Quan glanced at Zhou Xian and he hesitated. "He used to be gracious to Xingyanglu, but don't let Xingyanglu be implicated because of yourself." Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, indicating that he didn't need to think too much, just relax. Jiang Quan and Gu Ling said goodbye and left. Qin Pingon watched the pair of Taoist couples travel far away like mandarin ducks. Yuan Huang gathered his voice and said, "Qin Jianxian, I'm in a hurry for quick success. Forgive me." Qin Pingon just asked, "Is there a deeper reason for being so impatient? Is it because I couldn't really take revenge back then?" Yuan Huang shook his head and said, "I had already avenged Xue Hen back then, but along the way it is often seen that wicked people are in power. They are either dressed in yellow and purple with high positions of power, or those qi cultivators who call themselves Taoists, misbehaving, or the discipline is not strict and the momentum is getting bigger and bigger. Not to mention the sects of Jiang who dare not speak out, even the court and the government can't control them, and they are connected with the neighboring temples and they are more and more deeply ingrained. I have always thought about one over the years. The question is, there are some evil deeds. The local Shangguan and Guanxiang protect each other, and the general and the high-ranking in the court temple are dead. Why didn't they report the time and didn't arrive? The legend of the Qi practitioners who practice Taoism on the mountain is even more old. Has it been a few years? 10 years or 100 years? The old people in the world who have suffered from the disaster have died. The old events of the past one after another. As long as no one asks, it will be turned over? Happy thinking about it. It seems that the only way to solve it is to learn boxing at a higher level and with more strength in the hands and feet when punching. We walk and talk. Qin Pingon put his arms around his sleeves and said with a smile, "If you have met with Gao Jun of the Hushan faction before, there will definitely be a place for you in the two discussions in Demugwan Square and Luoyuan today." Yuan Huang said with a face, "Qin Jianxian praised it wrongly. When discussing things seriously, I am never a person who praises others easily. When you get to know each other in the future, you will know that what I say is true." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Before answering your question, I also have a question for you to answer. You don't have to worry about right or wrong, just say whatever comes to your mind. How about it?" Yuan Huang said solemnly, "Please ask Qin Jianxian." Qin Pingon stretched out his finger and pointed to the lake. "If you are the water monarch of Autumn Qi Lake and you are the owner and local owner, then do you think that treating all sentient beings in a lake, cultivating, supporting, suppressing, harvesting is fish farming?" Yuan Huang said, "As long as a gentleman has the right way to make money, use it and practice it, he thinks it's okay to keep fish." As a result, Qin Pingon did not comment on Yuan Huang's answer, but asked again, Do one injustice, kill one innocent and gain the world, what will you do? Yuan Huang said, I don't do it. Qin Pingon smiled. But Yuan Huang quickly added, it's just that I dare to say this now with a clear conscience. Assuming that such a day really happens in the future, I can't guarantee it now. Qin Pingon nodded, agreeing with Yuan Huang's supplementary statement, and said slowly, Tao is the main technique, supplemented by the right way. The more scheming techniques and means, the better. Even if you make a mistake, you can immediately know your mistake. And correcting mistakes has power in itself. If people can correct mistakes, they can conquer themselves. If a country can correct mistakes, it can benefit the people. Therefore, sages will say that knowing mistakes can make great improvements. There is no way, let alone walking the other way. The agency is too smart. Even if you are allowed to walk on a sunny avenue, there are still many hidden dangers. Just because all words and deeds are like sowing seeds, and you look back inadvertently only to know the road behind you, the fields have long been overgrown with weeds. It is human beings, ghosts, gods, or immortals. It depends on the heart, actions, words, and shapes. Confucians are teachers of people and Daoists are teachers of people. Those who have read books and those who haven't read books can be teachers of others. Practice at home, go out to meet people. When arguing or asking questions, you should speak with kindness, listen with a learned heart, and argue with a fair heart. If you win, you win, and if you lose, you win. This is arguing, not just a debate. Yuan Huang heard this and said with sincere admiration, this kind of quarrel is really good. If both sides have this kind of heart, there will be so many chickens and ducks talking about it. To be dejected, to solve the problem according to Mr. Chen's line of thinking, it will be different not only to propose a debate rule of careful reasoning, but also to propose a higher moral principle. But you have to admit that there is an extremely difficult paradox here. Where does a reasonable person need others to reason? Qin Pingon smiled and said, no matter what, I don't dare to be greedy for merit, because it is my husband who proposed these academic purposes. No wonder Mr. Qin is so open-minded and so calm in dealing with others. Yuan Huang sighed but quickly added, it's really a famous teacher and a master apprentice, Mr. Chen's husband. How advanced his knowledge is, the younger generation can't imagine. Qin Pingon smiled and patted Yuan Huang's shoulder. Yuan Huang, if you really have a chance to settle in Luopao Mountain in the future, then you can disprove the matter. The atmosphere of a mountain has nothing to do with me. You all bring your own up the mountain one by one. It's none of my business. I, the mountain owner, didn't care about you and you still have the face to blame me? How could Yuan Huang know that Luopa Mountain still has this kind of family style? He just thought it was about going to Luopa Mountain to learn boxing, and Qin Zhenxian had already agreed halfway. Yuan Huang and Wu Jiang also said goodbye and left, intending to travel together in the arena. As a parting gift, Qin Pingon told the two young martial arts geniuses a few more facts about boxing. Before you learn real kung fu, you must endure hardships and beatings first. Only when a martial arts master has the upper body of boxing can he truly enter the house. Since you are traveling together, you can usually learn more and learn more. You should not be too determined to win or lose, but you should not be completely absent. In addition, eating and living, traveling through mountains and rivers, and even practicing boxing, every step can be a boxing pile. Zhou Xian is the ancestor of the ancestors to eat and eat so that he can be lazy every day. Don't learn from him, you can't learn it either. But to say that you have learned a murder technique and you can't extricate yourself from it, it means that people follow the fist instead of handing the fist. The more you practice the boxing, the more you die. The worst thing to say is the way to die. There are thousands of boxing records and boxing moves. In my opinion, there is only one point in boxing. No matter who you are and how high your boxing is, you can face it and dare to pass your fist. There is no absolute good or bad in any character. It is like a double-edged sword. It is due to the discipline of parents and the restraint of teachers and teachers when I was young. After that, it is nothing more than to be anxious and slow. Afterwards, Qin Pingon told them the exact address of the Fox country. By the way, they were all young people with strong energy and blood, but don't look at it when you enter the Fox country. The town of Wenru is a hero's tomb and you don't want to practice martial arts anymore. Finally, intentionally or unintentionally reminding the two young warriors, the mountains and rivers are magnificent, and the world has great beauty. The warriors of my generation walk more and see more. Don't take a moment to look at flowers and generally don't care, then you are learning martial arts and you can improve your fists. Wu Jiang just regarded it as an empty talk. The young man nodded quickly and vigorously, but in reality he was absent-minded. Yuan Huang was word for word, silently remembering it in his heart. Zhou Xian said with a wry smile, Qin Jianxian, I really knew Jiang Quan's identity for a long time. The reason why he was able to find Jinjianglu and then ask for martial arts secrets is because I deliberately did it and regarded it as a secret chess. Qin Pingon said, It's nothing, a gentleman can deceive him. Of course, I'm not a gentleman of the academy, but the truth is that, plus your morale today, it's okay, it's just 3 things. You and Jinjianglu, there's only one chance left. Zhou Xian laughed at himself and said, Mr. Qin, it is I who treat the belly of a gentleman with the heart of a villain. Qin Pingon smiled and said, Be careful sailing the 1,000-year-old ship. In terms of original intentions, you are the same as Gao Jun. Put yourself in my shoes. At most I am a little more patient than you and have similar ideas. A lotus root blessed land, to be precise, the lotus root flower blessed land in the past, under the premise of the old Guanju deliberately, it can be called heroes and immortals everywhere. It's just that a female martial artist like He Qizhou, Zhou Xian is a chi fighter like this, and they are placed in the vast world. In the same years, their respective realms are not only 1 or 2 levels higher. Qin Pingon said, If the result is bad, everything is wrong. If the result is good, everything is right. Fellow Daoist Zhou, we encourage you and me. Zhou Shu really slapped the head of the Taoist gate. This sevuing female cultivator who was already convinced said, Remember it in your heart. Pei Xiang smiled and said, Before our mountain master came to Demugwan to discuss matters, we gave a hard lesson to Hu Jiao, who was wearing a dragon robe on the bank. Regarding the greasy relationship between the Dragon Gate Jing Hu Jiao and Taishenghuang Wei Liang, of course Pei Xiang clearly. Zhou Shizhen's eyes lit up, and the sullen breath that had accumulated in her heart for many years was swept away. She leaned over and cast 1,000 blessings but said nothing. That Xilang's hoof is just a matter of cleaning up. She deserves to be embarrassed here. Qin Pingon said, Wei Liang was able to break through the situation successfully at the beginning, because the Taoist mind was in harmony with the heavenly mind, and he treated the emperor's mausoleum snake kindly. It seemed that he had no intention but was actually willing. The Tao of heaven and earth regards this matter as a preaching and clarification of Tao, and he was not the first to form an elixir, and was preempted by Gao Jun to become an earth immortal. The disposition of the mind is shifted, and the intention to kill the mountain snake will make Wei Liang be regarded as halfway by the Tao, and he is not qualified to obtain such an immortal family relationship. Dao Yuzhou can talk about these inside stories, or you cannot talk about it, just encourage yourself. Zhou Shu was really embarrassed, but she still nodded and said, I will tell Wei Liang the truth in person. Qin Pingon nodded with a straight face. Quarrel. Go to Nanyuan country and meet Wei Liang. Even if you don't quarrel, there is a Hu Jiao next to you. I don't believe that the 3 of you can still be harmonious. Pei Xiang smiled and glanced at Qin Shanzhu. No vengeance, no vengeance. Qin Pingon said, The Qi practitioners under the earth immortals open up Qi palaces, just like digging wells everywhere. The more wells there are, the more spiritual Qi can be stored, but the water level and the rise and fall are still limited by the weather and geographical conditions. Why is it in my hometown? Biendu said to form a golden elixir. Fong is my generation? Just because a Qi practitioner has formed a golden elixir, it is like a wealthy doorway creating a huge cellar which can store ice cubes, and in the hot summer season, as long as if you want to eat, you can eat a bowl of iced plum wine that quenches your thirst at any time. It is like building a bridge of longevity, connecting the inside and outside of the human body. This truth is actually what Lu Tai told me back then, and I just relayed it. With Lu Tai's eccentric character and abnormal behavior, Zhou Xian must have had a psychological shadow back then, and it would be a good idea to recover a few impressions. Qin Pingon smiled and said, Don't worry, the Fox Kingdom will definitely not get involved in the future. Of course, if you are willing to make a covenant and become an ally on the mountain, I will definitely be happy to see it happen. Both places are mostly women, so don't embarrass women. Zhou Shu really gave a blessing, and Xianxia returned to the Damu temple. When she thought of taking the initiative to see Wei Liang and that Xiaolang's hoof, she felt bad. Pei Xiang said with guilt, Shanu Hugua didn't do any business at all, and he did a disservice to me. Am I not doing enough to be successful? Qin Pingon smiled and said, You Fox Nation do bad things with good intentions. It's justifiable. Even if the merits and demerits are balanced, it's not an example. Xiego said, Not to mention that Pei Xiang has also cultivated 2 proud disciples. The Hu Kingdom will be amazing in the future and there is no need to worry about not accepting it. Pei Xiang was confused. What the hell, two proud disciples, who are they? Wouldn't it be Luo Fume and Qiu Qing? Previously in that fox country they were quite frightened. Qin Pingan actually knew that Xiago had watched the torture in Huguo prison, and she even heard more than she saw. Qin Pingan looked at the bewildered lord of the fox country and couldn't help but ask, "Don't you know that Luo Fume has long since become the backbone of the fox country's palm discipline?" Pei Xiang became more and more puzzled. Shanju don't be yin and yang and said cautiously, "I know this girl Luo Fume prefers to mess with the so-called mind-reading knowledge and she was looking for someone when she was young. Bought and collected a lot of books on doctors and books. She seems to be better at sorting out espionage." But Pei Xiang, the state lord and master, used to only praise his disciple a few words, but in fact he didn't take it seriously. He felt that Luo Fume was not doing his right job, and he was doing these vain things just because this disciple was cultivating the Tao. The qualifications are good enough, and the breakthrough is not slow. Pike Xiankai did not express his dissatisfaction. Xiago smiled and said, "Pei Xiang, when you take time out, remember to hide your figure and see with your own eyes how Luo Fume tortures prisoners with all kinds of tricks and ruthlessness. You will know what it means to be the next patriarch of the Hu Kingdom." Already. Pei Xiang was frightened when he heard this and glanced at Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "It's just a matter of fact, no innuendo." Xiago said with a smile, "Sister Pei Xiang, let's discuss. Why don't you give Luo Fume and that Qiu Qing buy one get one free and let me be an anonymous disciple? The price is easy to negotiate. I still have some background." Pei Xiang glanced at Master Qin again but did not see any hint, so he could only say, "Miss Xia, we will discuss this matter later?" Xia Gui gave a fist. "That's it. Shanju and Xiaomo are both gentlemen with the beauty of adults. If I can't learn it, then take a step back and don't take people's favor. We will discuss it later." It's just that Pei Xiang suddenly remembered something. Previously in Luoyuan, the master of Qinshan seemed to say that Xiago was the second enshrined of Luopa Mountain. Could it be that he was still a person who can't be seen? A man of Tao? To be able to be pulled by Chief Zhou to be the door together, the girl in the mink hat must not start in the jade-purple realm? It turned out that Jiang Shangzhen was really bad, and the words he made at the door earlier left him alone as the lord of the fox country. After that, Chief Zhou chatted with people in Luoyuan. Xiago felt that he was 108,000 miles away from being the master of his own mountain. She was not interested in listening to Chief Zhou talking about the idle world. Qin Pingan Yufeng went to Gaiwexuan on Luodai Island, where he joined Zhang Lv Changming and Guizhujiu, and waited until Chief Zhou, who felt good about himself, left Luoyuan, leaving Pei Xiang to continue to participate in the next meeting of Demugwan. Qin Pingan he sacrificed the talisman boat and returned to Luopa Mountain. The group walked to the courtyard and put away the parasol umbrella. Millet Grain asked softly, "Good man Mountain Master, is this trip going well?" Qin Pingan smiled and patted her head. It went relatively smoothly. Hearing that the old Immortal visited Luopao Mountain this time, he showed his great demeanor and generosity. Not only did he get rid of the previous debt of 300 gold and copper coins, but he also voluntarily sent 1,000 coins. The key is that half send and half borrow. More than just solving Qin Pingan's urgent needs, it's simply a matter of first giving help and then adding icing on the cake. According to Jing Zhezhong's estimate, with another 1,500 gold and copper coins, Qin Pingan can once again raise the rank of Feijian Jingzongyu to Jingkuyu. Then there are only 200 gaps left. With the reputation of Luopao Mountain and the popularity of Qin Pingan, I believe that they can always be filled immediately. Only the Luoma Heliu clan on the Luzhou side of Beiju may still need to be filled. In addition to the Sanlang Temple, Luopaishan is willing to give a high premium, and it must not be difficult to buy 200 gold and copper coins from both of them. Qin Pingan just went to the house with the millet grains. Wanshu was busy with a lot of trivial matters, so she didn't follow the mountain master. Guizhujiu took Xiago to play with the white-haired boy from the mountain top of his family. Jiang Shangzhen is going to rush to the mountain gate to find brothers Dafeng and Daoist Xianwei to discuss their knowledge. He must feast his eyes on the trip to Demugwan and Autumn Chi Lake, show off with them and see if there is a chance in the future. Let the brothers go to the blessed land together, of course. If you can't rely on realm, this is inferior and it's meaningless. You must only rely on appearance and body to win the body and mind of beauty. Daoist Master Xianwei can say that people who practice Taoism need not be anxious to find a Taoist companion, but Brother Dafeng really can't. No more delay, many secret books with illustrations have been rolled up. Hu Peng Huoyo stayed at a Xianxia inn in Nazhou City. When Lu Qiqing was alone, he hesitated and there was a money bag on the table. The Taoist Fen Peo took a sip of wine and was worried. He was very good in dealing with others, but it was not very good at all, and it was easy to cause misunderstandings with others. This time when he went out to play, Lu Qiqing carried a large bag of money with him. It was sent to him from Baidi City. The senior brother said that he would open it when he was short of money, and let his junior brother dispose of it. The money bag seemed to be a magic weapon, and Lu Qiqing could not identify the type of immortal money by its weight. But as long as it was a gift from a senior brother, let alone Guyu money, snow money, or even market copper money, Lu Qiqing was unwilling to spend one, so he had to give it up. One by one, it is the brother's will. After all, Lu Qiqing's family is really not thin and he is short of money? How could he, the pavilion master of Liuli Pavilion, be short of money? For example, during the discussion at the Confucian Temple in China, Master Huolong took the initiative to mention that he had a batch of glazed tiles of excellent quality. It was hard to come by and surrounded by dangers. Even more thrilling, this real fire dragon, who was described by his senior as, "It's an accident to fail the 14th realm," is recognized as the leader of both the black and white of Beiju Luzhou. Seniors, don't you want to spend money and kill them? Your own pig. The old man asked Lu Qiqing if he had any purchase intentions. Of course, Lu Qiqing had a heart like a bucket. He was half worried and half happy. Of course, he had to pretend to be overjoyed. He gritted his teeth and bought it. How could he not buy? The glazed tiles that can be used by Liuli Pavilion are not the kind at the foot of the mountain. As long as there is one piece, Lu Qiqing must not miss it when passing by. Pavilion Lu, there are 100 pieces of glazed tiles and the price is not low. It doesn't matter, I buy as much as I have. Have it all. If the money is not enough, the younger generation will borrow it from others. Just to see the face of City Lord Zheng, and the poor road is only on the side of Pavilion Lord Lu, and only quoted a cost price? Lu Qiqing asked the old real person to make a price. After the old real person made an offer, Lu Qiqing didn't counteroffer, he paid directly, paid with one hand and delivered it with one hand, which was refreshing and refreshing. Seeing the old man's painful and regretful expression at that time, Pavilion Master Lu knew that he had made a profit and that the old man had lost money. Lu Qiqing finally spent 1,500 grain rain money to buy 100 pieces of green glazed tiles with a long history and strong Taoism from the hands of Huolong Zhenren. A little money, drizzle, and let the rich and powerful Lu Pavilion Master hurt his muscles and bones. At that time Lu Qiqing was very impressed. The old man was really kind and he really sold his brother's face. When the discussion in the Confucian Temple was over, and before the real Huolong traveled far, he wrote a letter to Lu Qiqing. The old real man said that he could overcome all difficulties, and there was still a chance to get 20 more glazed tiles. Lu Qiqing replied without saying a word and sent 500 pieces of grain rain money, saying that the senior must not lose money twice in a row. These 20 glazed tiles must be worth this amount. In fact, the 120 pieces of glazed tiles were first sold by Qin Pingon to Huolong Zhenren in Longgong Dongshan. It seemed that Lao Zhenren spent 600 grain rain money at that time. A good black eats black, only one cost price? Lu Qiqing was apprehensive in his heart, not knowing whether he could still be a guest at Luopao Mountain. This is actually because Lu Qiqing has been thinking too much. If he doesn't go to Qin Shanzhu, Qin Pingon will also look for him. Previously in Tianwai, Jing Juzhong lent money to Qin Pingon, and the object used to hold the gold and copper coins was an ancient inkstone with no inscription on one side, and it was in the shape of a hand-painted inkstone with the sun and the moon on the same wall. The arrangement of the 18 constellations. A girl with a mink hat appeared out of thin air at the Xianxia Inn, where the owner surnamed Dong was behind the scenes. She was lying on the roof as if the roof was uncovered and she lowered her head. She said to the guy in the pink robe below, "My name is Xiego, it is the second seat of Luopao Mountain, and our mountain master asked me to say hello to you, invite you to drink on the mountain, and bring along those good friends who met by chance but fell in love." Lu Qiqing got up and raised his head and clasped his fists. "I sincerely thank you, fellow Taoist, for informing you about this. Someone Lu will definitely take a friend to Luopao Mountain as a guest in the near future." The other party was able to appear on the roof unknowingly, and he could take off those tiles silently, which meant that if the other party wanted to, the head on Lu Qiqing's neck could be taken off anytime, anywhere. Sure enough, the Jade Purity realm is not enough to see, especially in the Chuzhou boundary where the crouching tiger is hidden. The sable-cap girl nodded with a smile, glanced at the bag of money on the table and put the tiles back on. Lu Qiqing immediately understood, and he had to pay money to go up the mountain to drink and be a guest. Walking on the road, Qin Pingon and his family Bao smiled and asked, "Old Cook and Lu Xianyang and Gukan have not come back yet?" Zhu Lian didn't come back, but what else could he do except to meet his old lover's former confidant? Qin Pingon didn't even notice. Qin Pingon was afraid that Lu Xianyang couldn't control Gukan millet grain, laughed and said, "They haven't come back yet." The old cook said he was going to beg for a few beatings and scolding. It's a weird word. Lu Dosui, Sister Wanshu and I swear and promise that he will not cause trouble if he enters the lotus root blessed land. At that time there was a young man next to Lu Kanshui. He probably saw that I was short, so he squatted down and talked to me. He is tall and has a good temper. He even whispered a few words to me in his heart. He said, "In the future, if I go to Baidi City and walk to the Dragon Gate, he will open the door for me and even let the water of the waterfall in the Yellow River Cave for me to flow backwards for me. I don't need to walk." Gently, with a big tone, I pretended to be serious. Of course I was really happy. He squatted there and blinked his eyes, and he smiled happily as well.